I'll call this meeting to order. I could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Ackerson, Ms. Billman. Here. Mr. Fell, Mr. Fitch,
Here.
Mr. Hopkins, Ms. Wadrago. Here. Mr. Trail.
Here.
Mr. Turner.
Here.
And Ms. Yu.
Here.
We do have a quorum. And for the minutes of the, which one was this? February 8th, 2018 regular Plan Commission meeting.
I move to approve the minutes.
Motion by Ms. Wadrago. Second by Mr. Trail. Are there any changes to the minutes? We'll do this on a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes are approved. We do have additional communication regarding the continued public hearing tonight. That is plan case number 2328 SU18. We have 4 emails and letters in support. One from Sophia Cianis and Andrew Anderson, one from Joe Edwards, one from Ricardo Lore de Mola, and one from Bob Schimmel, and a letter of opposition from Kate Hunter. Those will be read into the record. Now we move to continued public hearing, plan case number 2328 SU18, request by Frat Life LLC, represented by its manager Jonah Weiskopf, on behalf of the church in Champaign, for a special use permit, to operate a church at 713 West Ohio Street in the R7 University Residential Zoning District. Now, where we left it, Mr. Ricci, thank you. We had some additional information that we had asked for.
Yes.
So, please.
Chair, I will recuse myself for the case.
That's correct. Thank you. Ms. Yu recuses herself for conflict of interest.
So, as we left, there were some distinctions and clarifications that were requested regarding the building use, what portions of the building would be used for church and which for residential. There was also a clarification regarding the first sentence in the introduction of the memo. So I would like to offer a correction, if that is permitted, that Frat Life LLC has applied for a special use permit to adaptively reuse a portion of the existing dormitory at 713 West Ohio Street as a church. End of sentence. The Urbana zoning ordinance requires a special use permit to allow the proposed church use in the R7 district. The remaining portion of the existing dormitory would be used as a rooming house. The rooming house use is permitted by right in the R7 district. So I'd like to note a couple of corrections in the memo and the exhibits. The first is that originally there were 2 number 3 conditions, as we added in an additional condition, and so they are now properly numbered 1 through 6. And the second correction is that the floor plans that were submitted to us originally had 11 bedrooms shown. One of those is actually a storage area and hallway as it leads to the 3rd floor fire escape exit. So now there are only 10 bedrooms shown, and we'll go through those in the presentation. The staff did determine that the special use permit in any recommended conditions does apply only to the 6,048 square feet of the building that is designated for church use. The applicant did submit floor plans. Here on the screen you will see that this is the floor plan for the basement. Uses have been distinguished between church use and residential use. A few rooms have been shown as shared, and in those cases they're shown what percentage they would be used. In this case, the kitchen is used 50-50, and the pantry is shared between the church and resident use 80-20. These numbers were all provided by the applicant. This is the basement. Portions of it are shared. Most of it is used for the church. Here's the first floor, it's shown as 100% church use. All of the rooms are shown with square footages and dimensions. The second floor gets a little more complicated. It's church and residential 60/40. The rooms themselves have not been stepped off, but the square footages between residential and church have been shown. And then on the third floor, this is the original plan showing 5 bedrooms, and then here's the egress cutting through that one room that was shown as a bedroom and it is now actually hallway storage. That brings us down to the requested 10 rooms. Planning division staff then worked with building safety staff to determine building occupancy loads for the areas of church use and residential use, as well as an occupancy load for the main assembly hall. Here are those calculations that were shown in Exhibit C. I am not the expert on these. That is left up to building safety. What we did come up with was that according to building code only, total church occupancy in those areas designated for church use could safely contain up to 248 people in all of the church areas. The total residential occupancy could be up to 17 persons in those areas based on the rates as laid out by the Urbana Building Code. The main assembly hall alone could safely contain up to 108 persons according to building code. The total occupancy according to building code could be up to 265 persons. Although the occupancy load calculations estimate that the building can safely contain higher numbers of people, the prospective buyer is willing to accept a lower occupancy limit to maintain the character of and compatibility with the neighborhood. 2 proposed conditions would limit occupancy in both the assembly room and for the church use as a whole, including the main assembly room, to allow for limited occupancy of the church use outside of the assembly room during services. The zoning ordinance bases the parking requirement only on the number of seats in the principal assembly area. The parking requirement is calculated independently from the occupancy load calculations, which uses the size and use of rooms in the building. The building official and fire marshal, as we stated earlier, are permitted to set a building's occupancy or a room's occupancy at a lower number than what the building code formula could allow, which is what is proposed by conditions 2 and 3. As discussed during the public hearing, service times as proposed by the prospective buyer do end by 10 p.m. The prospective buyer is amenable to a modified closing time condition of 10 p.m. Questions that were raised at the prior Plan Commission meeting and by public comment include how the zoning ordinance determines parking and what zoning district is referred to in the special use permit criteria. The zoning ordinance establishes parking requirements in 4 different ways, including the way that the church parking requirement is calculated, which is the use of the primary use of the building as a proxy for overall use. So in this case, the main assembly room is a proxy for the overall use of the building. The zoning ordinance in other cases uses floor area as a proxy. Some use seats as a proxy, as the church does, but also schools, mortuaries, and movie theaters also use this method for determining parking requirements. A third way of determining parking requirements is using some other space as a proxy. For example, the number of tees for a golf course determines the parking requirements, or self-storage units determines the number of parking spaces for a storage facility. This is an excerpt from the zoning ordinance that goes through how parking requirements are determined. As far as questions brought up about the district in which the proposed use is located, Section 4.1 of the zoning ordinance establishes 23 unique zoning districts in the city. Their boundaries are based on the zoning designation itself, not on the contiguity of parcels with the same zoning designation. And we have This is the excerpt from the zoning ordinance with the highlighted portion that says the city of Urbana is hereby divided into 23 zoning districts. And then a close-up of the zoning map shows the subject parcel highlighted, and all of the darker green parcels are the R7 zoned parcels. This is all one zoning district, the R7 zoning district. So when the conditional use, the special use permit criteria say that this will not be injurious or detrimental to the district in which the use is to be located, it is the R7 zoning district that it is referring to. So the findings remain the same as given at the February 8th meeting and listed in the staff report. And the conditions, the options remain the same. The Plan Commission can recommend approval of the special use permit without any additional conditions, recommend approval of the special use permit with any conditions deemed appropriate or necessary, or recommend denial of the special use permit. As at the February 8th meeting, staff have recommended that the Plan Commission forward this case to the Urbana City Council with a recommendation for approval with the following conditions, which are shown up on the screen. Construction must be in general conformance with the attached site plan entitled Church Ramp Construction, and floor plans, which was added, entitled Floor Plans of 713 West Ohio, dated February 12th. Condition 2 is that the occupancy of the main church assembly room will be established and placarded by the building official and fire marshal to not exceed 80 persons and noted on the certificate of occupancy. The third condition is that the occupancy of the church use portion of the building, including the main church assembly room, will be established and placarded by the building official and fire marshal to not exceed 90 persons and noted on the certificate of occupancy. Condition 4 is that church events would conclude by 10 p.m. Condition 5 is that any future exterior lighting fixtures may be no taller than 12 feet. And finally, condition 6 is that the use must conform to all applicable zoning, building, and development regulations. And that is the end of the supplemental staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Any questions? So to clarify, the additional condition that you've added here, that's 90 total, including the 80 in the main assembly and 10 in the auxiliary church areas?
Yes. And then we modified the church event conclusion from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Right.
The applicant is here and as the prospective buyer, and they are in agreement with the modified conditions.
Great, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Trail?
What's the practical effect of this with percentages on the floor plan other than beyond this meeting?
The purpose of
We aren't going to see a modification request to the special use permit in a year because, well, they decided they'd take 2 of these rooms and make them offices for the church. I mean, the practical effect of how they divvy it up right now is, I'm assuming, basically 0.
Well, you would be putting a condition on it that the construction must be in general conformance with the attached site plan and floor plans. If that does not conform to that site plan and floor plans, then the special use permit would no longer be valid. And if the special use permit is no longer valid, the zoning administrator can revoke that special use permit, and then they would not be allowed to conduct church activities in that building. As well, if they violate the building plans that are submitted and approved by the building official, and on which the certificate of occupancy are established and signed and sealed, if they violate that certificate of occupancy, then they risk losing their certificate of occupancy, which means that portion of the building may have to be vacated and not used. So there are definite consequences to not following the building plans that are submitted.
part of my interest in asking the question is also
Mhm.
to not create something that will be difficult to manage over time. I mean, from my personally, mostly what we're talking about is intensity of use. That's why we're concerned
Pardon?
about. It's intensity of use.
Okay.
That's why we're
Mhm.
concerned about. Would it
Exactly.
be simpler to simply have one stipulation which is basic? Because there's no, I don't know whether I was the only one, so I'm wondering if there was some natural division of the building. That when you looked at it on the map, you go, oh, obviously that's the church part, so this is the dormitory part. But not really like that. Would it be simpler to just simply have one stipulation that says total occupancy of the building not to exceed 90 persons?
And that is why I restated that the special use permit can only apply to the use for which the special use permit is being requested, which is the church portion.
So we're pretty
So,
much forced to have it,
pardon?
we're pretty much forced to do it the way, the two stipulations rather than one, the two conditions rather than
Well,
one.
you could say, you could leave out the assembly hall portion and say the church use portion is limited to 90 persons. But you can't stipulate limitations on the building, on the residential use, because that's not part of the special use permit.
Okay,
So you can't put a limit on the occupancy of those portions of the building.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
To follow up on that just a little bit, if they did want to reconfigure the site plan, they would come back here and request a revision of the special use permit, a new special use permit?
Well, the condition as we're recommending is general conformance. So
Sure.
if you were worried that it was too specific, you could also change that condition a bit. Maybe you're not relying on the floor plans, but instead you're relying on the 6,048 square feet. So you could somehow put in that total amount of church use if you're concerned that changes to the floor plans would be a problem down the road.
Okay, that just clarifies it. Okay,
Okay?
thank you. Ms. Billman?
Would these conditions carry over to a future owner?
Yes, all special use permits and conditional use permits, all of the conditions carry forward to the future owners.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'll reopen the public input portion of this and quickly recount the procedures for public hearing. The petitioner may address the commission, followed by any others in support of the petition, followed then by anyone in opposition to the petition, and then at the end the petitioner may rebut. Then I'll close the public input portion and we will discuss and possibly vote. So if the petitioner is here and wishes to address us, please feel free. I see one of you. You're good?
I'm good myself.
Real quick? Okay, thank you. Just,
Just one.
you've already, no, you're fine. I was going to say, please state your name again, even though you're already in the record. And sign the sheet, please.
Ken Mooney with the Church in Champaign.
Jonah Weiskopf.
Great, thank you.
Just very quick, we had a board meeting among the leaders of the church the other night, Monday night, and we agreed that we can abide by these conditions. That's all I wanted to say.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Petitioner? No? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone else wish to speak in support of this petition? Anyone care to speak to the commission in opposition to this petition? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. So now I'll close the public input portion of the hearing and we'll discuss further, possibly vote. Any thoughts on the sort of revised conditions? No?
I'll just say, after my question, I think I'm fine with the
Okay.
current language.
All right, well, are we ready? If there's no further discussion, are we ready for a motion of some kind or another?
Can I move for plan case 2328 SU 18 that we vote to approve?
recommend to the city council
Right.
for approval
For
with,
approval.
with the conditions as listed in the
As
staff
listed
memo.
in the, yeah.
Great. The specific conditions in the revised staff memo. Yes. There's a motion by Mr. Trail. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Billman. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote?
Ms. Billman? Yes. Mr. Fitch?
No.
Ms. Wadrago?
Yes.
Mr. Trail?
Yes.
What was,
That was yes?
yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Turner?
Yes. That motion passes and will be sent to the city council with a recommendation for approval with the conditions as listed in the memo. Do we have a date on that?
March 5th?
March 5th. Thank you very much. Continuing with the agenda, we don't have any old business, so now we are going to turn to new public hearings. We have plan case number 2337, CP18, a request by Retreat of Urbana LLC to amend the comprehensive plan for properties formerly owned by Illinois American Water and Tecton Group LLC. These are at several blocks, several properties on North Lincoln, 910 West Church Street, four properties, on West Hill, and the request is to change the plan designation from institutional and community business to mixed residential. We really are going to combine the deliberations here with the second public hearing, plan case number 2338, M18, request by Retreat of Urbana to rezone 12 parcels totaling approximately 9.89 acres, formerly owned by Illinois American Water and Tecton Group, from IN1 light industrial, R2 single-family residential, and B2 neighborhood business arterial to R5 medium-high density. And these are for the same properties mentioned in the request to change the comprehensive plan. That was a mouthful. Mr. Marks.
So as you stated, these are two concurrent requests. First to be considered is the comprehensive plan map amendment, followed by the rezoning request as well. I'll just briefly go to, I'm going to keep this presentation kind of brief and concise.
Please.
The applicant has prepared materials as well that
Great.
they'd like to mention as well. This is the site of a decommissioned treatment plant from Illinois American Water Company, right near the intersection of, or north of the intersection of Lincoln Avenue and University Avenue, along with, so it's at Lincoln and Church. It's a large, rather large parcel. And just to the north of there are 11 parcels at the intersection of Hill Street and Lincoln Avenue as well. Those properties have been proposed for rezonings at several different applications over the last 10 years, one of which most recently rezoned that thin, narrow middle property to B2. The applicant is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning of those all. So the existing site, that water treatment plant has been fully demolished. There are still several single-family homes which are used as rental properties on the properties to the north. You can see that their zoning is IN1, R2, and B2. Towards the north, you also have single-family homes as well as prosthetics clinic. Those are zoned R2 and B1. Towards the south, you have a railroad as well as commercial businesses along the University Avenue corridor. Those are zoned B3, IN1. Towards the east, you have Carl Hospital Complex buildings, as well as a few single-family homes. Those are zoned R2, as well as MIC. Towards the west, you have some light industrial office properties that are zoned IN1, as well as some more single-family homes zoned R2. So in the comprehensive plan, the future land use designation map indicates most of the decommissioned water treatment plant site as being institutional. When the plan was designated, was being compiled in the early 2000s, it was adopted in 2005, the intention was that that plant would be there indefinitely. There were no way to foresee that would be decommissioned when it was, so it was given a designation of institutional. The eastern 2 acres or so of that, as well as the stretch of land going north of there, that includes all of the properties, all of the residential properties that are included in this application, called for a designation of community business to take advantage of the Lincoln Avenue corridor, which goes from the interstate all the way down to the university. The applicant is requesting a change in the comprehensive plan future land use designation from institutional and community business to that of mixed residential urban pattern for a plan that, for a development that would allow moderate density and an appropriate, that would also allow rezoning of all the properties from IN1, B2, and R2, which will be heard in the next application. The proposed rezoning would be to R4. The reason that they have requested R4 is they would like to put in a series of townhome style buildings. Originally, it should be noted that originally in this application, at the point of when this memorandum was sent out, the applicant had put in a request for R5. In our staff recommendation, at the point of when we sent out the staff report, we indicated a recommendation of R4. In between when we sent out the staff report and between now, our conversations with the applicant have indicated their willingness to go with an R4 designation as well, mainly because their development proposal would be permitted under the R4 development guidelines just as much as it would be under R5. They would be able to meet the open space requirements, the setback requirements, and the FAR requirement, which is the big one, with room to spare as well. So if you have any questions, I can elaborate further on that. So the request is to rezone all those properties to R4. Briefly, to go to their proposed development. They are proposing a series of townhome-style buildings ranging between 2 and 3 stories. It'd be 26 buildings total with approximately 126 units. There would be 333 off-street parking spaces provided for those units as well. The townhome-style buildings would be placed in a traditional neighborhood format. You'll see that they have a nice placement towards the street along Lincoln Avenue, as well as Hill Street to the north. The off-street parking is provided behind the buildings as well. They have an entrance for a main traffic entrance at a traffic light controlled intersection at Church Street and Lincoln Avenue. You'll see on the eastern portion of the property. The proposal also calls for a vacation of half of Church Street with a pedestrian and bicycle easement that would be going through it. That petition is being circulated or is being processed by the city's Public Works Department. And the development will be compliant in all aspects of development guidelines for R4, as I mentioned earlier. Just to briefly mention the LaSalle criteria, which are the criteria that must be considered from LaSalle National Bank versus County of Cook. The rezonings and future land use would reflect the proposed use of the properties and facilitate the redevelopment. The property is appropriate for the rezonings and future land use designations because of its proximity to an urban core, ability to serve nearby businesses, and ability to act as a transition between higher and lower density from the north to the south. The proposed rezoning would conform to the LaSalle criteria of being compatible with the neighborhood zoning and existing land uses. The rezoning would conform to the criteria for the promotion of public welfare and gain compared to the hardship imposed on the property owner. They would conform to the criteria as far as suitability for zoned purposes. And the proposed rezoning would conform to the criteria as the site contains a considerable number of vacant lots and developable land. The options before the City Council are to approve the applications as requested, or I'm sorry, forward the cases to City Council with a recommendation of approval, forward the cases to City Council with a recommendation to approve the comp plan amendment of a request of mixed residential urban pattern, and to approve the zoning map amendment to rezone the properties to R4. They may forward the cases to City Council with a recommendation to deny requests. If that is so, it should be articulated in the finding supporting its denial. The staff recommendation is to approve the comprehensive plan map amendment and to approve the zoning map amendment to, of all the properties to the R4 medium density multiple family residential district. Do you have any questions with that said?
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Any questions for Mr. Marks? Mr. Trail?
That seems like a lot of parking. I mean, a lot. 300 and how many?
333 spaces.
For
Yeah,
how many units?
I think Mr. Trail did, I was going to ask about this as a matter of fact. This is
Yeah.
a straight rezone. So we can't put any kind of condition on like we just did on the,
Not intending, I'm
you're
just,
just making an observation?
R4 versus, I mean,
Oh, I see.
is this I mean, just in terms of the, I mean, could this be done in an even lower zoning?
This would be the most, this would probably be the lowest district that it could meet because R3 is mainly meant for single-family homes and duplexes, as well as R3 has a significantly lower.
From a zoning perspective, what's the
FAR.
difference between 3 attached townhomes and a duplex? 2 versus 3?
The number of units.
Okay. Just in terms of parking,
The number of parking spaces is, meets requirements of our zoning ordinance for off-street parking. It provides,
does it exceed the requirements for off-street parking?
Well, again,
by-
it's not about the specific site plan. but-
I understand that.
Okay.
it slightly exceeds it, but it also provides parking for over 476 bedrooms.
Were there any discussions about, my impression of this is going to be full of students, that that's the intent.
The applicant is here and can certainly speak to how
Well,
they.
This is kind of the city's attitude about this. I mean, look at, this is student housing, and it's directly adjacent to what I think are one of the more problematic intersections in the city for pedestrians.
Is that discussion, Mr. Trail, or do you have a question?
Just kind of, well, maybe not.
You can make all your points, of course, when we.
Maybe it's more
get there.
appropriate for discussion. But
Yeah,
my,
I see where you're going.
sorry, I mean, I understand you're recommending this for approval, right? But, you know, were these things discussed when the city was looking at this as an appropriate?
The traffic of the site was taken into consideration, also the fact of pedestrian movement as what is called for in the city's long-range plans for that area and for that neighborhood in general. Also, we had discussions with Public Works about the nature of traffic on and off that property, the fact that it has a controlled, it's a traffic light controlled intersection at that purpose helps. It's also located right near an MTD stop that fits in with the city's goals for transit development that is adjacent to transit. And, you know, the fact that the buildings are right up against the sidewalk and the street, providing quick access to, you know, campus and neighborhoods to the south. It was taken into consideration, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Trail, any further questions? Ms. Yu?
I'm not sure if it's part of the proposal, but I do want to ask for clarification that it says in the LaSalle criteria number 4, it says that it will provide housing for those affiliated with nearby employment center and the university. So it can be read either way. Is it more of a target for student housing or for professional, young professional, or just like people who are holding a job, or for student? That's something that is not clear for me. I see Ms. Trail asked that question as well, so I would like to have that kind of addressed a little bit, either by you or by the applicant.
The applicant would, I think, will be happy to answer how they will be marketing their units, but they have indicated to us that they would be marketing to both students as well as professionals who might be working at the university or the hospital. So,
Anything further? I have a question. Oh, Mr. Turner?
Just a quick question, which may not have completely applied to this, but, so the plans here would close off Church Street? So there wouldn't be access to Lincoln
it would involve a,
neighborhood?
technically there is a right-of-way that goes through there. Let me go to the current.
A right-of-way, but no street.
The street.
It kind of stubs off from Lincoln Avenue, it serves those properties, and then turns into grass.
You can see how it is a public right-of-way, but there's no existing street there at this moment.
Okay.
But, so their request involves vacating the eastern portion of, right up to where the, sort of the property line ends. That would involve the vacation, but it would still require an easement, an access easement for pedestrian traffic that would be moving, that'd be going westward.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Billman?
Where are the MTD stops? Are they anywhere along there?
The MTD stop is on on the west.
Can you move the cursor over there, Chris? It's north of the intersection.
Right there.
On the west side of Lincoln Avenue. The city has had some initial conversations with MTD about, with this proposed development, you know, locating the best possible site for that stop, if it would to remain in the current location, or if it might involve moving it. Just some initial conversations, but the city is talking with MTD about that.
Might it possibly be changed to the corner of University and Lincoln?
I can't speak for what MTD would recommend.
isn't that where there's a couple of billboards?
Well, there's that, but it's also close to the railroad tracks, which
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
just, you can figure if
Well, we can discuss that further.
Okay.
I have one clarification. I'm trying to find it in here. I can't find it. So concerning access to the site, regardless of in what configuration. Did I read in here, which I can't find, that, so general public access would be off of Church Street from Lincoln at the light?
yes,
And then there was another point of access for emergency vehicles?
on the western portion of the site.
So is that, I point at it with my finger, but nobody can see that. Yeah, if you could zoom in and show me where that is. I
So-
couldn't picture it.
Okay, so Lincoln Avenue, you'll see the hand
Sure.
is right here. This
That's
is
Church, yeah.
where Church Street is. The main entrance for the public would be right here. There is an entrance located right here that's
So
meant for emergency.
coming in the
vehicle
back
access.
way.
Yeah.
But there's no way to prevent anybody from coming in that way, is there? It's the back way. I don't know if it creates problems with two-way traffic, but again, not to this configuration necessarily, but you don't consider that second access to be available to the public, even if it's meant for emergency vehicles? Is it that?
It would not be available to the public, no.
It has a gate proposed that
Oh,
the
okay.
emergency vehicles would have the ability to open.
I was just wondering, how do you go about keeping people from using an entrance
Yeah.
that's more convenient than the other one?
Okay,
Right.
yeah, I see what your question is. But
Depending on which way you're coming. Okay, any further questions for Mr. Marks? Thank you. Oh, hold it, Ms. Billman?
So there's only one entrance and exit to this site?
one entrance available to the public,
With-
to the tenants.
For 476 bedrooms, there's only one way to get in and out.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, thanks. So now, once again, the procedures for a public hearing, we will allow the applicant to address the commission and provide evidence in support of the application. Then anyone else in support of the application will be allowed to address the commission. Then anyone opposed to the application will be allowed to address the commission. The applicants may then rebut and provide further evidence, and then we'll close the public input portion and discuss and possibly vote. So if you could just state your name, sir, and sign the paper, that'd be great.
Yes, sir. My name is Jason Dornbos. My address is 315 Oconee Street in Athens, Georgia.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me here tonight. Again, my name is Jason Dornbos with Landmark Properties. We're the applicant tonight. Just wanted to give you a brief background on Landmark. We're a national development company. We specialize in multifamily in college towns where there's towns that have major universities. We like to be within close proximity to university. We do not only rent to students, but we do design and market to students. Just given the proximity to the university, we anticipate having, a large amount of students at this project. We're vertically integrated. We have our own in-house management company. Nationally, we have around 8,000 units under management. We've developed over 30 projects in the past year around the entire United States. We've developed a bunch, as you can see, in the Southeast, Texas, West Coast, some in the Northeast as well. What we have proposed here is what we call what we specialize as cottage-style housing. It's multifamily that's created in a way where we mix up unit types to look like a mix of craftsman-style single-family and townhome units. They're really just spread out. They're done in a way that creates kind of a nice streetscape. And then we have a lot of community features in this that are what you would see in a professional institutional quality apartment community. We have on-site property management, maintenance. There's someone on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We'll have a swimming pool, computer labs. There'll be extensive landscaping throughout the project. and then some outdoor activities that for the residents as well. We've done bocce ball, open green space, stuff like that. So here's an example of what an elevation looks like of this cottage style that we brand the Retreat, is what it's called. These are lower density style housing. We use very durable materials. All the exteriors are made from hardy plank and masonry. You can see that there's usually do brick up above the water line on the ground level. As I mentioned, we have on-site property management, leasing on-site, and then we do an extensive set of amenities. We'll have a large clubhouse, and then the resort-style saltwater swimming pool. Probably have a heated pool in this market. And then, as you can see here, they're really laid out in a way that creates an aesthetically pleasing streetscape inside the property, so that we use different elevations, different color schemes on the trim and on the buildings to really kind of make it look like you're driving through a neighborhood. It's got a real nice look when you're driving through it with this Craftsman style. And you can also see on here, we do an extensive amount of landscaping. We'll do well in excess of what code requires on most of our properties. Then here's an example of just some of the community amenities. You can see here's a clubhouse we did in State College at Penn State. Here's just some of the green space that we like to have just for activities. A lot of the residents have dogs, and this is an attractive housing option for those people that have pets. We've done some putting greens. We have these group fitness centers. You can see here there's actually on-demand fitness that, they'll come in there, turn that on, and there'll be an instructor, and they can do classes in these facilities. And then here's just, you can see the pool area, just an elevation of that. And then inside the clubhouse, we've really started doing a lot of these. We create kind of a cafe, coffee bar area that's very popular with students. When they're studying, a lot of them want to go to a Starbucks, so we kind of create that atmosphere where they're going there having a cup of coffee on their laptops, studying in groups. And then we have computer labs as well. You can see here is a computer lab. We'll have just, and then some just areas for, they just look nice where people can come hang out. There'll be some pool tables and other activities like that. And this is the actual interior of the units. You can see, try and do a very nice finishes inside the units. We do crown molding. This is actually, I think this is granite countertops. We've now switched to quartz just as a more durable option that requires less maintenance. You see we do vinyl plank floors that are extremely durable. If there's ever an issue, you can just cut it out a piece and replace it. And then we do larger beds inside these units. All the bedrooms are typically full or queen size beds. And this is just to kind of, I think staff did a great job covering this earlier, but just to kind of reemphasize, we've got residential to the north, and then more of a commercial business district here. You've obviously got the hospital right here, and it's just a good transition. It's not high density residential, and it's not super low density single family. It's transitioning. The R4 is a good transition from this higher zoning to a lower density single family, and we feel like it's very appropriate here, especially versus the industrial. We're able to come in and reuse, adapt and reuse some infill property in this area and do something great, which we think is going to be very successful here. Here's a comparison, just, again, I think staff did a great job covering this, but just to show that what the current zoning is today with the industrial that has the FAR of 2 with no height restriction, and what we're proposing, the R4, with the anything over, I think it's 2,000 square feet, the FAR of 0.7, which we're actually proposing to be even under that some, and then 35-foot height. And here's just a outline of the property I know you all are very familiar with. And then just here's our conceptual site plan, just to give you an idea of what what kind of product and how we envision developing this site. You can see the railroad tracks are obviously here. We've put more of the high-density townhomes along the railroad tracks, away from the neighborhood, closer to the higher density zoning to the south. And then we envision reducing the density as we move north towards the single family, just to kind of, what I described earlier, really transition from those two uses in an appropriate way, we feel. Keeping the amenity area central to the property. It's great that there's already a traffic light here we're just connecting to, and then tying into what the city has asked for this, planning for this bike path to connect through right here. And we're very excited about this opportunity. Love to be part of your community. We feel like we've got a product type that really fits this particular site and location very well, and happy to answer any questions you have of me.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly. Did you say Dornbos?
Dornbos, yeah.
With a B?
Doornbos.
Okay.
It's a tough one.
Well, I can get it phonetically.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Mr. Dornbos?
So, current proposal, how many square footage do you have for each lot per unit?
So it's one lot. This would be one lot per unit.
Because to meet the special requirement for the R4, you need to have at least 2,000 square footage lot area per unit. So I'm asking, what is the current lot area? Maybe it's more of a question for you.
Yeah, my calculations indicated approximately 3,419 square feet per unit.
3,400? Okay.
19 square feet, yeah, per unit.
Another question. So I see you are marketing it as 2 to 4 bedroom, and I do see a very heavy tail towards the 4 bedroom. As you proposed here, for 126 unit, there are only 4 2 bedroom unit, 20 3 bedroom unit, and 102 4 bedroom unit.
That's right.
If you are trying to targeting for young professional, I was wondering if this proposal is way too heavily geared towards 4 bedroom, which is not usually the optional choice for young professional. So I would like to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah.
I'll let you answer that question, but this really isn't about the specific site. It's about the zoning,
Okay.
which is anything anybody wants to build by right on that. Your question about the square footage is great. That would apply to anything that they try to build on it. But so don't get too far into the particulars of this proposal, because this is just a straight rezone. And even if they build this in 50 years, somebody could come and just build something totally different.
So basically, what you are saying is that they have a proposed plan, and as long as this proposed plan meets what they are proposing to develop, which is R4, that's the thing we need to look at.
If we rezone it, anybody building anything there would have to meet the requirements of R4. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so just like when we are talking about a special use permit, we are giving the right to this piece of land, not really with respect to specific proposals.
That's correct, except that with a special use permit, we have more ability to put conditions on to what we're being requested to recommend for approval or denial.
Mm-hmm.
With a straight rezone, we can't condition it further than the zoning ordinance already does, really.
Okay, yeah. The reason I'm asking all this question is really because here that there's the proposed floor area ratio is 58%, exceeding the 50%. So that's why I want to get a little bit further into that
great.
discussion. But okay, I guess you answer my question is 3,400.
And I will say the city does have restrictions on the number of unrelated that can live together in a unit. And in this zoning category, it's 4. 4 unrelated is the max unrelated that can live in the R4 zoning district.
Okay.
Anything further?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Dorman? Oh, that was close. No? You did not easy. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Does anyone else wish to address the commission in support of this application? Does anybody wish to address the commission in opposition to this application? Sir? And if you could please state your name and sign the paper, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Michael First. I own the 1102 and 1106 West Church. 1102 is on the northwest corner of Harvey and Church. And then there's a vacant lot to the west, and I also own 1106. Okay? And I'm concerned about the visual effects of the 2 or 3 buildings that are across the street, and how they'll visually affect my my 2 properties. And so I'm opposed to the configuration as presented, and I'm concerned about that corner.
Is there any way you can indicate which? I don't have numbers on this.
Let's see. If can you see Harvey?
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Yeah. It's to the west. It's to the west of that of the circle.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
The circle is east of Harvey. I'm west of Harvey.
Okay, great. Yep.
Okay. And I own the house on the corner, which is 1102 Church. Then there's a vacant lot
I
in
can
between.
see it now. Thank you.
And I
Yeah.
I also own 1106.
Okay, great.
Okay. And I'm concerned just about that section.
Sure.
I mean, the rest of it I'm not terribly concerned about.
Okay. Have you talked to the developer at all about?
No, I just found out about this when I got a mailing
Sure.
several days ago.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. First? Mr. Trail?
Could you just tell us specifically what your problem with the visual is?
Well, I'm just concerned that the buildings look the street's very narrow, and I'm concerned that the buildings will cast, will cast quite a shadow on my houses.
Right.
I mean, if I could, be convinced otherwise that this won't be a problem, then, I would let my objections go away.
Sure. That's kind of why I was asking if you've
Yeah.
talked to them, see if they work with you.
Right. Anyway, but it just those buildings near.
Yeah, that's
near
a
that intersection.
well-noted concern.
That
Yeah.
that concern me. The rest of the development, it will have no effect on me at all.
Ms. Billman?
I'm not sure how to phrase this. What, if we rezone it like this, what is the maximum height that could be along there?
I had that sheet. I think for R4, I think it's 35, but
It is max 35?
I think.
Okay.
Don't let me guess.
It's maximum 35 feet, yes.
Yeah.
And setback? Oh, now I'm getting you.
It does look like one of those houses very close to the street.
There's a required, for R4, the front yard setback is 15 feet, the side yard is 5, the rear yard is 10.
You all right? Any further questions? Ms. Wadrago?
So the rear yard is 10, and what's being proposed is that the the townhouses would be facing inward, so then would their rear yard be facing the road that his front yard is facing? Is that not
If
correct?
it's frontage along a street such as that,
It-
it would be a front
it's
yard
still
setback.
Yeah, it's-
looks, okay.
It's often
'Cause it's
difficult to
off the
tell
street.
which is the front and which is the
Yeah.
back, honestly.
And it is a real
And
street.
sometimes there's
so-
3 or 4 front yards, you know. Depends.
Thanks.
So, any other questions? Nope. Thank you, sir. The applicant, any other in opposition? Does the applicant wish to address us again regarding the concerns?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'll get, I think Mr. First's contact information. I'll reach out and try and.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be outstanding.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Well, no further public input. We'll close that portion and go into discussion. Anybody have anything that they'd like to bring up? Ms. Yu?
Yeah, I'm still obsessed with that unit. So I think what I'm getting at is that if the minimum requirement is 2,000 per dwelling unit, and right now they're standing at 3,400, does it mean if they want to build more units and more two-bedroom unit and still meeting that 0.7 maximum floor area ratio and the 2,000 per dwelling, they will be allowed to do so if we grant them offer?
My impression is yes.
Okay.
And city staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but they can build anything on there that meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So they could add to the density of the site, which is a very good observation. They could probably go higher. I don't know how high these things are. I saw the elevation, but they don't look like 35-foot things. Maybe they are, I don't know.
Since they are looking for the cottage style, probably they don't want to go higher.
That's
but
probably.
it's just a mix that it will be within their own decision making.
That's
how
right.
they want to utilize this zoning if it is granted
That's right.
to them. Okay.
Anything further? Mr. Trail?
I think that there is some importance to asking them specifics about this because it isn't R4 now. They're actually asking for some substantial changes to the zoning in order to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent that we think this, at least is representative of what they intend to do, which probably won't be exactly what they do.
Sure.
They're asking us if we think this particular type of development is advantageous enough to the city that we are
That much you can-
willing.
That much we can discuss 100%.
Right. I have a lot of problems, not with the additional density, but potentially the way this is being done. I am very concerned about, this is student housing, tons of parking, and the university's practically right across the street. So I don't think the university is going to provide an extra 300 parking spaces for these people to drive their car across the street to go to the university. So a whole lot of them are going to be walking, and there's pretty much no way except right through that intersection at, so it's kind of like,
If there's students, they'll be taking the bus.
oh yeah, they're all going to be taking the bus.
Well, it's an interesting point that that's not a ped-friendly intersection.
Mr. Chair, can I point out, I don't know if everyone is aware that the Illinois Department of Transportation has recently completed a safety study for the university corridor, and they will be implementing those items, I think, starting this construction season.
Yeah, I know, I talked
Yeah,
to them about those items. The other concern I have is that you're substantially adding to the density, and, which I think actually is good, but this is actually an area that was, at least a portion of which was set aside for community business, which you would normally expect with additional people. You would need additional services in the area. So this would seem like to me to be a logical thing. What sort of you can still put some types of limited businesses in R4, correct?
No. It's special,
Limited.
yeah, but very limited with the
Yeah,
special
very
use permit.
limited. So for all intents and purposes, we're cutting any business development of any type off for at least this section of Lincoln Avenue, just to the time we're putting a whole lot of extra people there. So, unfortunately, there's not a lot, to do about these types of things. This just kind of seems like a typical suburban development being plopped down right next to a major university. We get into a lot of the same issues we get with West Urbana and things like that. I don't know. I have problems with it. Less the upzoning, but the upzoning with the idea we're going to attract this particular development. I mean, that's kind of the root of my concerns.
Or this particular kind of development or whatever, something.
Well, in this instance, it's this particular.
You're going to draw a lot
we
more
have-
people into
We don't have
this
anybody
side.
proposing anything else, and we have to make the assumption
Sure.
that if we do it, this is what will be developed.
I think that at this point, that's true. Anything further? You got your hand on the button?
Oh, I guess I was gonna do a little bit of a tangent off what you said about the comparison to West Urbana, except that it's North Urbana, but then there's comments that I don't know if I can really make without it being generalized. I think from the beginning, I'm thinking about North Urbana. I've lived there as a student. It was a long time ago. But I guess I would want to phrase my concern as a question to everyone else on the board to see what the thoughts would be about community impact.
I think that's a great question, yeah. Well, you've lived there, you're familiar with the neighborhood. What's your impression of the community impact that this type of development or in this type of zoning designation would have
Right.
adjacent to what is, at this point in time, a largely residential still area?
Right.
A single
And-
and two family, or even single family.
Yeah, and some of them struggling families.
Sure.
So, I don't know if there's any more I want to say about that, but we can think about that and maybe see what we can do to include that concern with how we treat the case. But that's about all I can say about it.
Well, I think that's a really astute thing. And had you been on the Plan Commission as long as some of us gray hairs, you would know that you might know this, but the part that's the spur, where the single-family homes are today, we discussed that in about 4 previous Plan Commission cases. And every one of those dealt with the community impact almost front and center. And we had, at that time, the ownership, that's right, yeah. And we did have people come then and worried about that. Just because they don't come and register objection, I don't know what that means, but it does mean that we haven't heard anything. And I think you said there was a public meeting, so maybe.
There was a public meeting open to the public. It was an open house format that was held at the Greater Holy Temple Church, in which residents had a chance to come in and talk with the applicants about what was being proposed, and they could answer any questions and so forth. So yeah, there was a chance for community feedback that at a meeting last month.
And was it negative, positive, neutral?
I'd say it was mostly neutral. We did not receive any communications regarding this case of people expressing an opinion. I think I had 2 inquiries of people who declined to leave their name, just asking specific information about the case and, if the parameters of where the development would be and so forth. We did not receive any explicit communication in opposition to the applications. So,
Okay, that's helpful, I think. Mr. Trail, were you going to address that point, or Mr. Turner had? I was going to move on. Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Before we leave this point, yeah.
I was just going to make a quick point about something you said. That most of the things we would, in community impact had to do with the fact that people would rezone these for business uses.
That was the case before, that's
And the
exactly.
type of business uses. So this is a little different than what's been going on, so, but I think then it was all in context that we thought this was going to be a water plant here
Forever.
in perpetuity.
Yeah, right.
So this is the major change that's happening now.
Yeah.
I do, just quickly, have a concern about closing off more of the street network. I mean, you would think that the community would have at least some concern about, be nice to be able to walk, if you wanted to walk from there down to University, now you're gonna have to go further out and around to get to it even than before.
All right. I mean, you can't walk through the water treatment plant, though.
No, but you could walk down Church Street.
Yeah, but there's supposed to be a bike path.
Should be noted that there's no street existing on that strict, it's right of way, but it's not a paved
It
street.
looked like people did it, though.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
It was,
applicant wonders if they could address the commission.
The applicant, if you would step up, please, so that mics will catch you.
I was just going to say that we are actually putting a pedestrian connection right through right here.
So it'd be a better.
Yeah, so it's actually going, we should be improving, addressing that concern, and I think actually improving. So this is planning for that a bike trail to go through here at some point. So there'll be a pedestrian connection right to here. And then this
It's.
is not our property, this is city right-of-way here.
So the city's intending to complete the rest of the bike path?
I don't know. Mr. Turner?
That's right. I just wanted,
Thank you.
Thanks.
just my perspective, I think this looks very intriguing. I think that it takes a decommissioned water treatment plant area right in the center of town, and build something that is, from my perspective, the plan looks great, from many different points of view here. I think that it is interesting that it's probably going to be marketed more towards students. Now, I think that this is closer to campus than some other developments that are marketed towards students that are further away, north on Lincoln here. There is a lack, I think, from working at the university and working with a lot of new professionals. There's a lack of places for new professionals that are away from students. And it'd be great to see this marketed more towards new professionals, because I think new professionals are out far away in Champaign, and it doesn't really connect them as well as what they could be connected to in the university community. Now, I'm university biased to a certain extent because I work with I hire a lot of new professionals at the UI who are looking for places to live. But I think this offers some interesting opportunities there, right in the middle of town. I think it's something that there might be some things similar to this in Urbana, but I can't think of a lot that are quite the same. And so, to me, this looks great. It looks like it's building a community. Maybe it'd be marketed more towards graduate students, or there's a lot of transient graduate students here at the University of Illinois and in this community. I think that the development has been very intentional about, even in terms of getting closer to the single family, being a little bit lower density. University is a lot of businesses. There's the Carl, there's OSF, so there's a lot of employers right there. The university is very close. And there are always concerns to be thinking about, but from my perspective, this plan looks very interesting, and I would say I would support the rezoning.
I want to add to that. The reason at the beginning I asked so much about that number of 2,000 square foot is actually trying to go to that issue. I do agree this town needs some high quality professional housing that is closer to university, and 2-bedroom unit would be ideal for that population. And given if we grant them offer, they actually could build a lot more unit than what they're proposing. replacing some of the 4-bedroom unit with 2-bedroom unit. It could be adding some asset to the community in a sense. And I heard stories of, back then I wasn't on Plan Commission, but I live on Nevada Street, really close to that current under development by Green Street Realty, and I heard stories about they were planning on building more 2-bedroom, but they couldn't under the current zoning, so they end up with 3 or 4-bedroom. Personally, I think it's a lose of opportunity. We could use more 2-bedroom in closer in-town location. So, yeah, this plan looks good, but if it's up to me, I would like to see more heavily geared towards 2-bedroom instead of pretty much exclusive 4-bedroom. So that's echo your comment, and I also want to ask the question for the developer: is this going to be a gated community, or how are you going to secure your borders?
Yeah, our plan would be to gate it. So there is a gate. There's some gates right here. 1, 2, and 3.
And how are you going to build the boundary?
So there's between these houses, there's like a little fence here. So the front of the house, it's not like, the fence doesn't go around the perimeter. It just looks like it's a, fenced-in backyard.
And I'm more talking about the overall, the site. Is it going to be walled off from the rest of the community, or how are you going to treat the boundary of your site to the neighboring properties?
We typically just do a fence.
I think you're asking, is this going to be a walled and gated community?
Yes, walled and gated. That's the question. Gated, I'm sure you want to secure your parking, but to what extent that wall would look like is a question I have. I don't know if you're just going to build a 12-foot solid wall to keep your little retreat out of everyone else.
We'll try and do a nice looking fence around the perimeter of the property, kind of a decorative looking fence.
And are there landscape requirements when R4 butts up against R2?
Yes, so along the western section there, south of Hill Street, that would be subject to landscaping requirements. But front yards, there's not a requirement.
So just basically not a large portion would have a pretty small.
There's not correct, there's only a small portion that has a required screening or buffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we typically exceed code requirements for landscaping. That's one thing that we like to do a lot of, landscaping.
Anything further, Ms. Yu?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Billman?
Well, this kind of development is exactly something that I think that Urbana needs. And now that it's sitting in front of us, I'm thinking, oh, but all the congestion. So, I think I can't have it both ways. Yeah.
Mr. Trail?
That's why this close in, you want to look for development that's going to encourage and allow people to not use their cars as much as possible. That's why I was pointing out a lot of parking, and by taking out, the business aspect of this along Lincoln Avenue, you're even less places to provide walkable services for a denser development here. And I'm sure, it's like, damn if you do, damn if you don't, because if people do walk, they're going to be walking to the university. They're going to go right across University Avenue.
I mean, the thing
Yeah.
is,
So in 5 years, are we going to be talking about how many people got killed in that intersection walking
I
from
hope
this?
well,
I
the-
hope not either.
I
but
know, I
That's
hear you.
kind of
I hear you.
why,
The thing about it too, if it's geared towards students, though, they're coming from somewhere else. They have to have a way to get there from somewhere else. So in my experience, a student would come from St. Charles or Naperville or wherever it happens to be, Aurora, and drive here, park in their lot, and take transportation or walk to the university, because you can't park on campus.
Mr.
It used to be
Trail?
what parents were for.
Okay, anything further? I think I'm going to wait a little bit here. I think that the most exciting aspect of this rezoning, absent any comment about the specific site plan, except that it's here, it's with us, and it's going to allow redevelopment of a pretty crucially important spot, that if we don't zone it right, it could sit vacant for a long period of time. So that speaks in favor of I think, what some of the other commentary I've heard. As far as the site density, the need for two-bedroom apartments and things of that nature, that's good advice to impart to the developers. Although we can't really do anything about that once we zone it. But R4 is better than R5. And the 2 points are exactly the points that you've been bringing up. One is the congestion on Lincoln, especially if it's gated. If there's a lot of vehicular traffic at certain times of the day, traffic could back up there at certain times of the day. Now, the other one is pedestrian crossing of University. And they the word is, and I think statistics bear out, that fewer and fewer students have been using their vehicles. Many will use, hopefully, public transportation. But even to cross Lincoln on a bicycle, right, I mean, to cross University at Lincoln on a bicycle, even that's a little dodgy, in my opinion. Having said that, I think it's for me, it's a go because of the opportunity to redevelop that hugely important parcel. You can disagree.
Well, I'm only going to disagree in the sense that I think there are significant problems with it. You, especially this close, you would really want something that integrates in the community a little more. Just creating putting a gated community right there, which you really associate more with suburban areas and things like that.
It's suburban stuff.
Yeah, it is more density than we have, but most of the open space is parking lots because of all the parking. So, to me, yes, we can't really say much about what they're going to do once we rezone it, but the issue is that's our stop right now, because they have come to the specific one asking for this specific zone. There are other possible zonings at this.
Right,
This is
and
not
that's a good question,
It's
too.
not as if the only possible development would be if we did this rezoning. I think there are potentially other uses in,
Well, a neighborhood business use was what we really originally had discussed. And,
that doesn't mean leaving the current zoning.
no, I understand that. I
Yeah.
understand that. The current zoning.
My concern
has
is
to
if
go.
an R4 is going to get us this, I'm not sure R4 is the right zoning for the spot.
Okay. I was going to look, R3 is the next one down. I mean, alternatives that would be sort of more fitting into the neighborhood that we had talked about before. One would be business, neighborhood business, and which I think we had rezoned these to neighborhood business. Part of one of the square over there up on the north side of Church.
Would you like me to put the current zoning map back on the?
Sure, sure. And then, if you're going to stay residential, I mean, I don't think you want to go general business there. Maybe on the frontage toward University. But I don't think we can carve it up and do part of this and part of that, maybe. I mean,
It currently is multiple zoning.
I know,
It isn't
I know.
as if multiple
but
zoning
is that a good
completely
idea?
inappropriate.
You know what I mean?
I don't
And does it-
necessarily agree with that.
Sure, but I'm just asking the question, does that hurt the ability to redevelop this thing? If you carve it up into, say, some commercial, which would be compatible with with, I don't even know how this is, is that all one big parcel, it looks like it on the map, but,
The retired Illinois American Water site is one large parcel.
so that's pretty much, we gotta go one way. I suppose we could, on the thing across between Church and Hill, we could look at a different alternative for that. Anyway,
Well, none of those are actually really on our plate. All we
That's-
can sort of do is.
I'm not, yeah, I'd have to ask city staff what our latitude is on that. If we went down to R3, then now you're talking duplex. And that's not what this is. I don't know that you'd get that whole big parcel redeveloped in duplexes. Although we just, the one we had over here with the school, we did that. So I'm just talking around in circles here, so somebody save me. You're fishing for
I'm not sure we can.
So you're fishing for alternatives. I'm not sure there are any, is I think what I'm
I
saying. No
think
good
if
ones.
we wanted this development, this one works, offer works. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Well, could also the developer take into consideration some of the comments that we made tonight? And, I mean, this isn't a set-in-stone proposal at the moment. We're not voting on a development, we're voting on the rezoning.
zone.
So perhaps a developer could take into consideration some of our comments in terms of thinking about moving forward with this. I know that's just a request.
Yeah,
But-
that's right. Okay, anything further? Okay, no further discussion? Are we ready to, somebody move it one way or the other? Motion by Ms. Billman, I believe?
Yeah, do I move both cases?
No, let's move the comprehensive plan amendment first, vote on that, and then come back and move the zone. Yeah, we didn't discuss the comprehensive plan amendment much at all, so either before or after you make your motion, we need to discuss that a little bit. You can go ahead, we can do it after.
Tell me if I do this right. I move that we approve Plan Case 2337, CP 18. Approve it?
Recommendation for approval to city council,
Yes.
motion by Ms. Billman. I don't think there's no conditions on that. So,
No.
second by Mr. Turner. All right, discussion on the comp plan amendment. This was really, I think, originally part of this, the frontage on Lincoln was originally supposed to be community business or neighborhood, community business on here, yeah. And then, of course, you had institutional on the backside where the reservoir was. And now we're going to mixed residential urban pattern, which is what the proposed development is. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. Mixed residential urban pattern could mean a lot of things, but one of the things it certainly means is that the comp plan will no longer see it as potentially commercial in the future.
There is a provision for commercial within that comprehensive plan designation.
Interesting.
But not in the zoning.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any further thoughts? Anybody have a big problem with the comp plan change? No, me neither. All right. Well, we've got this motion on the table. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Mr. Fitch,
Yes.
Ms. Wadrago,
Yes.
Mr. Trail,
No.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Yu,
Yes.
That motion passes.
Ms. Billman,
Oh, sorry. You made the motion.
Yes.
I just made a false assumption right there. I've seen people vote against their own motions. Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe, if anybody. So now the zoning case. Are we done with discussion on that, or is anybody ready for a motion on that? You can do it again.
I move that we approve Plan Case 2338M18 and send it to the City Council.
With a recommendation for?
Approval.
Yeah, and let's note before well, you can go, if there's a second, let's go ahead and get that.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Turner, motion by Ms. Bellman. Let's note in this recommendation that this is to R4, not to R5 as originally stated in the staff memo. And it's consistent with city staff's recommendation. We just clarified it. It's good. We're good. Terry will write it up like it sounds good, right? So whenever you're ready, we'll do a roll call.
Ms. Buitrago,
Yes.
Mr. Trail,
No.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Ms. Yu,
Yes.
Ms. Billman,
Yes.
and Mr. Fitch.
Yes. That motion's approved. Do we have a date on, is this March 5th as well?
Yes.
March 5th to the City Council. Thank you. Okay, considering the night of 1,000 cases. We have got now before us Plan Case 233M18, a request by the County Board to rezone 13.82 acres from conservation, recreation, and education to medium-density, multiple-family residential. This is located at 500 Art Bartell Road in Urbana, Illinois. Thank you, Mr. Ricci.
Good evening again. The night of a few corrections. So I would like to note a correction in the staff recommendation for this case. Incorrectly included a recommendation to approve a comprehensive plan amendment in the memo, so please disregard that. As Mr. Fitch stated, this is a request to...
I'm sorry, yes.
Submitted a request to rezone 13.82 acres of the county's 63.56 acre East Campus, which encompasses the site of the Champaign County Nursing Home, from conservation, recreation, education to R4 medium density multiple family residential zoning district. The existing nursing home is permitted under a special use permit granted in 2004 for the establishment of a nursing home use by a public service entity in any zoning district. As this special use permit is approved and only applies to public entities, the permit would not be valid if the nursing home was no longer operated by a public entity. Therefore, the county board has also requested a conditional use permit which would allow any entity, public or private, to operate the nursing home in the proposed R4 zoning district, which is the lowest intensity zoning district that would allow a nursing home. And I would say also that the conditional use permit was approved last night at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The City of Urbana originally authorized establishment of the nursing home under a special use permit in 2004. It is currently located here east of Art Bartell Road. Let me zoom up a little bit. North of Prairie Park, west of Weaver Park, east of the Satellite Jail, and south of the Juvenile Detention Center. To the north is East Main Street, and off to the south is East Washington Street. The county board could have eliminated the need for the conditional use permit, which they were granted last night by requesting a higher intensity zoning district, but it requested the lower intensity R4 district because it wanted to preserve the character of the surrounding area. Rezoning the property would also correct the current zoning designation of the juvenile detention center, which is split zoned with the south half in the current CRE zoning district and the north half in the northerly adjacent R4 zoning district. To the east and south, as I stated, lie the Urbana Park districts, Weaver Park and Prairie Park. This is zoned, I'll bring up the zoning map. The subject property is outlined here in red. It's part of the CRE zone, bounded on the east by an R3 zoning district, which is the site of Weaver Park. To the north is the R4 medium density multifamily residential, also to the northeast, which is the site of the U.S. Army Reserve building. To the northwest is an R6 high density multifamily residential district, which is the site of the Ilias, and further off to the northwest is an R4 district. The majority of this parcel is zoned CRE. CRE is defined as its purpose is to conserve natural and scenic areas for open space, recreational and educational purposes, both public and private. The proposed zoning would expand this northerly adjacent R4 district further south. The purpose and intent of the R4 district is to provide areas for multiple family dwellings at low and medium densities. And that district would permit the existing skilled nursing facility nursing home with a conditional use permit, which was granted last night. The attached zoning description sheets provide more information about the permitted uses in both the CRE and the R4 districts. As far as the comprehensive plan goes, I'll bring up that exhibit. The comprehensive plan shows up much better on your screen than mine. All of the blue areas are designated as institutional use, and the green areas are park use, as designated by the 2005 comprehensive plan. The institutional use is defined as generally including public, quasi-public, and private uses such as governmental, educational, medical, religious, or university facilities. As the services, scale, and intensity of the use of the existing nursing home are not anticipated to change from those laid out in the 2004 special use permit, the nursing home would continue to conform with the definition of an institutional use. The following comprehensive plan goals and objectives also pertain to this request. Goal 15, it would encourage the compact, contiguous, and sustainable growth patterns. Goal 34 is to encourage development in areas where adequate infrastructure already exists. And Goal 43, which states provide for the distribution of social services to Urbana residents with diverse needs. The proposed rezoning would contribute to meeting these goals by allowing the continued use of the nursing home, which functions essentially as an institutional, medium-density residential facility on a developed site that is surrounded by other institutional uses. The site continues to be well-suited for the nursing home's institutional residential function. The proposed rezoning would expand the adjacent R4 district from the north to the south to encompass the nursing home property as well as the southern half of the juvenile detention center. Residents, visitors, and employees are within walking distance of Prairie and Weaver Parks. The current location along Art Bartel Road is very accessible to current and future residents, employees, and visitors. The proposed rezoning for the property ultimately determines what can be built there. In this case, the R4 district is the best option to allow the nursing home to continue to operate within the institutional future land use designation, as it is the least intensive zoning district that still permits a skilled care nursing facility by right or with a conditional use permit or special use permit. The proposed rezoning would be less intense than the northwesterly nearby R6 high-density multiple-family residential zoning district. It would also standardize the current split zoning of the juvenile detention center from CRE and R4 to simply R4. This proposed rezoning must also meet the 3 LaSalle criteria. It would be compatible with the land uses, existing land uses and zoning of the nearby property. It would expand the R4 district located to the north and would be compatible with the R3 district to the east. It would remain compatible with the CRE districts to the south and west. The R4 district allows low to medium density residential development, and it matches the nursing home's institutional residential function and the neighboring institutional residential functions of the juvenile detention center and satellite jail. The second LaSalle criteria discusses whether property values are diminished by the restrictions of the zoning ordinance. In this case, the property's value, while operated by the Champaign County Board and the current CRE zoning designation, is not assessed, and the board is exempt from property tax collection. The CRE zone essentially limits the uses of the property to parks, schools, or government uses, and therefore diminishes the property's value. Rezoning the property to R4 allows for additional uses, which would likely increase the property value. The third criteria is the extent to which the ordinance promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And criteria number 4 is the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property owner. In this case, the proposed zoning would not harm the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. It would allow the nursing home to continue to provide skilled care at the same level of services, scale, and intensity as originally envisioned with the 2004 special use permit. Rezoning would facilitate the continued use of the property, which would be beneficial to the public. The fifth criteria is the suitability of the subject property for the zoned purposes. In this case, the current CRE zoning district is fairly restrictive, allowing primarily agricultural, educational, institutional, or recreation-oriented businesses. It is unlikely that the property would be redeveloped as one of these other uses. The property is better suited for medium-density residential uses, including institutional residential uses, which would continue to exist by rezoning the property to R4 with the conditional use permit that has been granted. And finally, the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned. In this case, the property to be rezoned has been operated and occupied as a skilled care facility since 2007. Rezoning the property would allow continued operation by either a public or a private entity since the conditional use permit has been approved. The staff findings are that the Champaign County Nursing Home is owned by the Champaign County Board, is currently zoned CRE, and is designated by the comprehensive plan as institutional. The board has filed a petition to amend the Urbana zoning map to rezone the property to R4. The property is located on the east side of Art Bartell Road between East University Avenue and East Washington Street, and has been in operation as a skilled care facility since 2007. The zoning change would facilitate the continued operation of the nursing home. It generally conforms to the LaSalle criteria, and the property continues to be appropriate for an institutional residential use due to its proximity to other institutional uses and nearby parks. The options for the Plan Commission in this case are to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation to approve the request as presented, or to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation to deny the request. In this case, the staff recommendation is to approve the proposed rezoning. And that is the end of the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Any questions? Mr. Trail?
All right. So basically this rezoning is to allow the sale of the nursing home?
It is to allow
To a
for
private
an expansion of the pool of people that could operate the nursing home. Because
Yes.
currently,
Operate and sale are different.
I have nothing to say about the sale of the Champaign County Nursing Home. That's not the request that was presented to
Would the
us.
rezoning be necessary if simply the operation of the nursing home was contracted out to someone? Or is it necessary in order for it to be sold?
Marcus, you might want to pull out the special use permit from 2004. The language in there is fairly specific, but it talks about who can use, to whom that special use permit is granted, and it needs to be a public entity. If it no longer is a public entity, that special use permit is not valid.
The nature of my question here is, I'm just trying, honestly haven't followed the nursing home debate particularly, because it's sort of a sad thing, but I haven't followed the details particularly closely. It's quite common for governmental entities to contract out the management of things, but that would not be this rezoning would not be required to facilitate that.
No, only because the folks still behind the nursing home is a public entity. Sure, you can farm out, contract out the actual day-to-day operations, but ultimately the responsible party is a public entity.
Again, the gist of my question is the rezoning required for transfer of ownership or only a transfer of management?
I think it's fair to say definitely ownership, but maybe we need to.
I would
maybe
also
discuss
say
these.
that the applicant is here tonight,
we'll ask.
as well as a representative from the State Attorney General's office.
Oh, distinguished. We would have put you on first, sir. Ms. Wade-Drago, come back to it? Okay.
We can let the applicant know.
Okay, more appropriate there. I have a question about this. So if the conditional use permit has already been approved,
Correct.
I'm looking at CRE, and I don't see nursing home as a conditional use there.
So the conditional use is a section 7.7
It's a
of the
special
zone
section of this.
that
right.
allows a special use permit to be granted for any government entity to operate a list of
Sure.
uses.
Yeah, right.
But if it stops being a public service entity, then that special use permit is no longer valid.
Right, I think what I'm driving at is if we don't approve this, or recommend approval, and the zoning stays CRE, then that special use permit under the special law that allows the special use permit stays in force?
Correct.
And the conditional use permit is null, I guess?
I would not be able to speak on that.
So the conditional use permit that was approved last night by the Zoning Board of Appeals had as a condition that the zoning be changed to a zoning district that allows a skilled
That's
nursing facility.
Exactly,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Turner?
I was just curious too. So if we vote to recommend approval for R4, what's to say it turns into townhouses at some point?
Anything that would be permitted in an R4 district would be
So would
permitted.
that be negating the public good under the LaSalle criteria of providing healthcare nursing facility for the community? If it could be no longer
So
facility.
the staff report was specifically focused on this proposed continued use, but I think for a rezoning case, it would be within the purview of the Plan Commission to look at all of the permitted or conditionally or special use permit uses, and with a bigger eye say, are any of these for the public good? More so than it, say, remaining vacant or
Yeah.
becoming vacant.
I think we
Certainly.
come back to that in discussion, and I was kind of looking at that too, and I, there's some, what's a public good? Right, so we'd have to just look at some of these uses and see. Anything else? Over here? I think that does it,
Okay,
Mr. Ricci.
thank you.
Thank you.
And so the applicant is here?
Exactly, yep. The procedures for a public hearing are that the applicant can talk to us, speak on behalf of the proposal. Then any other proponents can speak on behalf of the proposal. The opponents then get a chance to voice their concerns, and then finally the applicants will have a chance to rebut. So if you please, sirs, if you could state your names and sign the paper, that would be great.
I'm Jacob Krogert, Assistant State's Attorney, here on behalf of the applicant, who is the County Board of Champaign County.
I'm John Hall, the zoning administrator. I'm helping just shepherd this through the process.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
And I don't think that we have anything necessarily to present, given what was in the staff recommendation and covered in the staff memorandum, but we're happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Did you want to mention those covenants?
Yeah. Well, in response to...
Maybe you do have.
I mean, in response to Mr. Turner's question, I didn't want to presume to start if folks had other questions, but one of the conditions that the county has attached to its proposal to request bids for sale of the nursing home are conditions that require that a buyer will commit to the use of the property as a skilled nursing care facility with a number of other restrictions consistent with its current use until 2027, the end of 2027.
Thank you.
So.
Appreciate that. Now, anything further, I think, did you have one clarification on whether this enhances the ability to sell it or whatever? You're good?
I wouldn't say I'm good.
Mr. Jago, did you?
Is this a discussion portion?
Not yet. Oh.
I mean, I guess.
I don't have any questions for him.
Probably more. No, it's just more discussion.
Now here we
Well,
right.
maybe I'll just restate the question I asked earlier. Is this rezoning all about allowing, basically, without the rezoning, there cannot realistically be a sale to a private party?
That's correct. That's based on our conversations and Mr. Hall's conversations with staff, that this rezoning would be necessary in order for a private entity to own the nursing home, which is what the county board is engaged in the process of doing right now, is considering sale.
So the stipulations on the sale require the use as a nursing home until only 2027, 10 years. Actually, less.
Yes, that's right. That's what's in.
Does it actually require that a nursing home be operated there, or that simply nothing else be done there?
I'd have to consult
Interesting
the exact
question.
language here. Thank you.
In other words, can it sit empty? Or whatever. Yeah, right. He really doesn't.
Yeah, it does indeed say that the facility shall be operated as a
Okay.
skilled nursing care facility until the end of 2027.
So as long as they have one patient, they're within the, one resident, they're within the boundaries of the stipulation?
It doesn't sound like something that a private owner would necessarily want to do, but yes.
8 years, 9 years, that's a pretty short investment cycle. If you were saying 30 years, that might be more, but that's not a very long, it can take that long to really get going for redevelopment. So,
Well, and that's,
it's a comforting sounding thing, just my stipulation, my concern is it doesn't actually sound like in the end it really has a lot of teeth. I mean, it sounds like we're presiding over the end potentially of that as a nursing
Yeah,
facility.
this is a lot like the last case. We're not considering the conditions of the sale, just the zoning. So,
Although, again,
Well,
those of
and-
us who like protest votes.
And the, you
Yeah.
know, at this time, the county board is, of course, according to the city, under no obligation to operate a nursing home at that location on its own as well, and has its
yeah, the CRA is a
directives
very
from the
limited.
voters.
But I would suggest if you simply said, we're not going to run a nursing home here, but we want to sell this, wouldn't the sale be potentially more valuable?
Given the young age of the building, I think, my understanding is that no, it's certainly more valuable as a skilled nursing care facility.
All right. Anything further, question-wise? Nope, thank you. Does anybody else wish to address the Plan Commission on this case? All right, well, in that case, we'll close the public input portion and go into discussion. Did anybody have any thoughts?
I mean, this is going to sound kind of casual, what I'm saying, but Champaign County Nursing Home is a public service to provide care for the elderly, and it's not necessarily a for-profit. So, you know, it's sort of like giving up in privatizing or selling to a private owner. And I don't know how the shift in clientele would affect the community, or whether or not that clientele in place would receive the same amount of visits from family because all of a sudden they can't afford to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking about, and
Oh, that's fair. So your concerns are that,
I kind of want to see this public good turn it around and give it another shot, honestly. I think that it shouldn't be a give-up sort of situation, and that's just me casually talking about it without any...
no, I think,
I
Very fair.
feel the same way, but I feel like our hands are kind of tied to a certain extent, though, with the was it a referendum that the vote that authorized the sale of the nursing home advisory, was that the lack of funding from the state of Illinois that can't keep the nursing home afloat. It's sad, and I mean, you can probably tell by how I'm talking about how I voted. But not everyone voted that way. In fact, it was the opposite. So I feel to a certain extent our hands are tied right now because of circumstances. You know, we can't decide whether or not the nursing home continues as a public good. That's not our role. There's many others that have been having this discussion for a number of years. I mean, I think that I don't know, I feel like our hands are tied to a certain extent. But
go ahead, Mr.
Please.
Chair.
I think you raise an extremely, and actually both of you raise an extremely,
Yeah,
what
I
is
agree.
our role here?
That's exactly where I'm going.
Because
Well, I think
to a certain degree.
our role is
what-
definitely not to facilitate the sale of the nursing home.
Yeah, what, the
So,
way, yeah.
but we might unwittingly do it.
The way these.
So we have to be cognizant of exactly what the consequences are of this, and so
Yeah.
thanks for bringing that up.
The way these things roll, having seen, actually one situation with a nursing home and other sorts of, is, you know, you get this sort of velocity, this momentum towards something, and all of the stops along the way where something might have been stopped to force reconsideration, everybody gets with their little piece, it's like, well, you can't say no.
Okay.
The question is, though, we're asked, in essence, we're an adjudicated body,
Mhm.
right? So we're asked, based on what, the salary criteria, which I'm not even sure how applicable in some ways they are. We're presented with commercial or residential sorts of development issues and things like that. What can we consider? I mean, we talk about the public good and whatever, and if, let's say, for instance, everyone on this panel thought it's not in the public interest to turn this over to private investors. Could we, and stay within the purview of our, our
Authority,
charge,
sure.
based on that alone, say no?
We can say no to the zoning. We can't put conditions on it. I think that if we say no to the zoning, it should be on the basis that we don't think that this zoning of R4 is appropriate to the property. Again, agnostic of use, but the reality is, what Ms. Drago said, that there's something there. There's been some controversy surrounding it. There was a referendum about it, et cetera, et cetera.
What happens, what are the options if we vote to not rezone this?
Well, that's what I asked about before, the special use permit status quo. So the nursing home stays with the condition that essentially it has to be used, I think was the language,
The language in the special use permit I checked, it's government use.
government use.
So then what options exist?
You know what I'm saying?
I think what it would do is present the sale to a private party.
I think that's right.
I don't think it would prevent, for instance, a private party managing it.
I agree.
mean, it's not as if, we're just, in essence, and by zoning it, furthering its removal from the public.
The
from public
possibility of
ownership.
it, yes. It's not a foregone conclusion or anything.
It doesn't necessarily say anything about who's running it,
No,
managing it.
I agree.
I feel that, and perhaps this is a question for the two of you, that there are much better educated people among running a county nursing home who have thought through some of these things. But I know it's
Yeah. So,
Where
I
do
mean,
where would the low income clientele go if this was no longer an option?
well, if it wasn't rezoned and it just ceased to be a nursing home because nothing could go there, where would they go?
I don't know about Illinois law, but can they actually do that?
I do not know.
Some states
Don't
they
know.
can't.
That's
Yeah, I
a
do
great
not know.
question.
I think it's a very open question, yeah.
Could we ask?
I don't, well, sure, if you know where they would go, if you have anything to add to this, sure, please.
I just wanted to try to address that concern, the one first raised by Ms.
Quadrago.
Thank you, Quadrago. That among the restrictions that are contemplated by the covenants that would accompany a sale to a private buyer, that were put in place by the county board, and the county board is who is here asking for this tonight. It shall be operated as a skilled care nursing facility. All residents who are residents of the facility on the closing date shall continue to be residents after the closing date, and no existing resident shall be transferred by the new operator to another facility without the written consent of such resident or for medical necessity as determined by a medical professional in accordance with industry practice. At least 50% of the licensed beds at the home shall be reserved for Medicaid-eligible persons to the extent allowed by law, and the new operator and its successors will use their absolute best efforts to accept all such Medicaid-eligible residents. There's a priority for county residents. The purchasers of the homes shall provide priority for admissions to residents of Champaign County where there are insufficient beds for both individuals from within the county and from outside of it. There are also provisions for retaining employees, but essentially, the county board is doing its best with this, with these conditions to ensure that the home will continue to operate as it has
For 10
in the
years.
interests of county residents.
Sure. 9 years, sure.
Yeah.
What options does the county board have if it's not rezoned?
So the referendum authorized sale or closure. And as you recall, the accompanying referendum to fund it failed.
Right.
So the county board has difficult decisions in front of it, and right now is asking the city for these land use approvals in order to be able to sell it and to be able to continue to operate it. And the county board hasn't, at this point, identified any other way to continue to operate the home.
Although you can't say closure at the moment, it sounds like.
No, I mean, that's, no. I mean, that is a legal possibility.
Sure.
That hasn't been voted on by the county board.
Okay.
So the question the board, the plan commission asks is it possible to hire someone else to manage it? Is it a
That's not the plan
possibility?
commission's business.
Yeah.
It's not our business.
Right.
But-
We're considering a zone. And, I mean, we're considering the consequences of the rezoning, but we can't weigh in on who they hire.
No.
I'm not asking who they are hiring.
Or what,
I'm
even
just,
what kind of entity.
if it's possible, if it's a possibility.
It's possible that they could hire a private, if they're not going to run it or manage it private,
Yeah.
contract the management, then if they do sell it, it would have to be probably to a private company. I don't think there's any other way.
The nature of my questions were about, what happens if we say no?
Right.
What are the specifics?
Right.
As opposed to, I can't tell them what to do.
Right.
But-
And we didn't know at
Right.
the time what he just read, which is quite
Yeah.
comforting.
It's
Well,
actually-
I do have a quick
It's
question.
in the.
What happens in the
it's in
nature of the
exhibits.
purchaser declares
The
bankruptcy?
exhibits do include the pre- and post-closing
Yeah, it's-
restriction covenants.
It's buried back in there
It's
somewhere.
buried in,
Yeah.
Let's,
Yeah.
let's,
And we got 5 other of these
can I-
things.
can I just finish my last little, what happens to your covenants in the case of the declaration of bankruptcy by the purchaser?
Bankruptcy by the purchaser?
Yeah, purchaser declares bankruptcy within 3 months after purchasing it.
Or whenever, yeah.
What, will there be a nursing home operating there in 6 months?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I don't have the specific portion of the covenants available, and I'd be happy to provide it to you. Do you have the whole operations transfer agreement?
Okay,
If you know
there is.
where it's at.
So they are required, per the stipulations, per the conditions of the sale, to operate a nursing home even if they are operating at a loss.
Yes.
And it says, so. I mean, it didn't say that in the conditions that you read to us.
They are required to operate a nursing home at that facility as a condition of sale, and
Even if they declare bankruptcy
yes, I mean, that would be up to the.
and
up
cease to
the-
exist.
That would be up to the trustee in the bankruptcy case, but
Yeah.
yes.
All right, thank you. Anything further, question-wise? All right, thank you. Back to the discussion. What I wanted to focus in on is, back to the zoning. We know the issues, I think, we talked about pretty good about the nursing home.
Yeah.
There's concern there that we could, as a unintended consequence, cause something to happen that some of us don't want to happen, right? If you look at the zoning, and I want to have one question for city staff. I'm trying to reconcile Exhibit A and Exhibit B. And are they oriented the same way? I guess.
yes, facing north.
Yeah, I guess, okay, there's Learman, I see it. So essentially, if this was R4, it would be surrounded on 2 sides by other residential zoning districts?
It
So,
would-
so really, the R3, which is that inside of Weaver Park?
That's Weaver Park.
Really? That doesn't make any sense.
There are a couple parks that are zoned.
There's
residential.
all right, I'll trust that it is.
Can I And you guys can correct me, but I'm assuming that when it was donated to the Park District, that was the zoning. And since the Park District, I don't think has the funding to do anything for quite a while,
That's true.
they haven't rezoned it.
So it's just
Is
sitting
that
there.
accurate?
I would not be able to speak on the date of which it was zoned R3 and when it came under ownership by the Park District.
Well, can you grant my assumption that I doubt the Park District came here at
No.
the time it was donated and
That's
asked for
probably
an
a
R3?
fair
Yeah, no,
assumption to
that's-
make, yes.
So the other thing is the other ones, are which are residential
Other business.
to the, towards Main Street, are, that's also all really institutional uses, right?
Correct. There really isn't an institutional zoning designation, so you have to kind of look at the uses to see what zoning designations you would want for a particular parcel or portion
Sure.
of land.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't know what the possibilities are, but I don't think residential's appropriate for any of it.
Well,
I realize that you have to pick one, and you've got uses that exist, and they may way predate the zoning designation. Go ahead, Mr. Ricci. Yeah.
If you did not have a question for me, then I will keep my mouth shut.
My question is there an alternative that allays some of the concerns? Or actually, my question is really, is R4 the appropriate zoning district for this particular place? We know some of the consequences that would enable. Other consequences that, in the long term, whether it's 9 years out or 8 years out or however many years out, when the covenant would stop being enforced, I'm trying to find the zoning sheet. Some of the other public goods. I mean, here's the sheet. You've got agriculture. That's not going to happen. You've got golf course. But public good, I don't know.
So in answer to your question about whether this is the best zoning designation or not, this is the least intensive that allows the
current use.
existing continued operation of a nursing home.
Right,
R5,
yeah, I get that.
R6,
Even-
and R6B would allow it by right, but then you're looking at higher intensity
Probably
uses.
even less appropriate. I agree.
Or it could be B2, business 2.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I understand why you chose R4, and it does have the conditional use permit, which is an extra protection, I guess. It could be a school. It could be a charity. It could be a library. It could be a government building. Could be a nursing. It is a nursing home. Could be a park. But anyway, so
Could be a park. Yeah.
there are other things that are good that it could be if we zoned it this. So if you're thinking specifically about that LaSalle criteria regarding the public good, I mean, there are other public good
Sure.
things. I mean, it could be housing, the most likely thing that it might become, usually, except for the weird location of this thing.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Right next to Weaver Park, come on.
right next to Weaver Park. Yeah, that's
Humane
true.
society.
That's true.
And the schools.
So anyway, that's the things we have to think about.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Ms. Billman?
Well, if, say, in 2037, the nursing home ceases to exist, I don't have any problem with these other uses in R4. In other words, I'm saying fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
You think R4 is a fine designation,
Yeah.
even after, in the eventuality, the nursing home ceases to exist? Does anybody else have thoughts on that? Just that plain question. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate. I don't see anything wrong of being used as R4, even if it's not a nursing home for the location.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Trail?
You know, this is probably, you would hope that in a few years, things would turn around. And I'm not specific about the nursing home, the general situation that's brought us here the last 30 or 40 years, that things would start to reverse. I mean, at some point we'll hit bottom and things will start to reverse.
It might be there.
And part of the issue here is they become so much harder to reverse once you privatize.
Yeah.
Once you let it pass out of public hands, the property pass out of public hands, now you've got construction costs and all the other things that make it so much more difficult to start to provide services again. You would love to be an optimist and say, we vote this vote and we hold it off for a little while, and in another year they'll have it, faced with the actual closure, a referendum without the privatization magic
Maybe
wand
it'll
would pass.
Sure.
I don't know that
There's
that's,
all sorts of things that could happen, you're right.
I don't know that that's the case.
Well, here's.
I do, the bottom line is basically, to me, is voting for this is voting for its sale.
Our
voting
hands are,
against it.
I want to say that our hands are not tied. Mr. Turner, you said our hands are tied. Our hands are not tied.
Yeah, I
They're
don't
not,
think
but
there's,
it feels like it.
Well,
and
it's,
I think that's
but
the
I
intent,
know,
to make it
I know.
feel like
it's a
that.
sort of Damocles.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
but there are consequences to voting no.
Ms. Wadrago, and that's exactly right.
So,
Here's what I think about this. I don't think it's ripe. We're an adjudicative body, as you said, and there's a principle of ripeness, meaning it has to be time to make the decision, right? The case has to be at a point where it's the right time to make a decision. And one of the things I think is that the county board needs to make a decision before we do. In other words, they haven't decided to sell it yet.
But haven't they?
You could tell us the status. I thought they're still going back and forth on it, but they may.
Should I address the commission?
Please.
So, yes, the county board has voted to market the nursing home for sale and is inviting bids
Okay, so they're
right now,
actively in the
which
process.
require
Yeah.
sizable deposits. And in order to be able to market this facility and hopefully obtain a buyer who can run
I thought you were
it,
in a different place.
who can run it,
Right.
it would make it extremely difficult for the county to do that were the land use
Yeah,
approvals
right,
not to
I
be
understand.
granted.
Sorry, I thought you were not that far along.
Yeah. So they, right.
There does have to be a final vote in the county board in order to confirm a sale. Once the county board has evaluated offers that are
Sure.
made in response to the bid proposal, and then arranged terms with the buyer, then a final vote must be taken.
Yeah, okay, well, I stand corrected.
Can I ask, and maybe this is not, I mean, it's germane, but perhaps not. What was the vote again, percentage for increasing taxes? Do you remember?
Very disappointing from my perspective.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, do you remember?
Two-thirds?
No,
I don't
Yeah.
recall.
I know.
It wasn't very
Yeah,
high.
right.
I mean, I'm thinking of 30.
Okay,
Was it?
all right, well, thank you
Yeah.
for straightening me out. So I guess it is time to make a decision. We get asked by developers all the time to rezone their properties
Right,
so that we
Right.
just did one tonight.
right.
So let's go.
I mean, to a certain extent, we feel like we want to be an activist and preserve the public good of a nursing home, but we're the plan commission.
Mhm.
And the county board they're charged with deciding, I mean, right.
Yeah, well, everybody can, go ahead, Ms. Raytard. Everybody's going to vote their conscience, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from a political standpoint, not political meaning politicking, but
Yeah.
the public did say how they felt, which is that they didn't want to support
That's, well,
it continuing. They didn't want to
Right.
chip in.
Yeah.
So we know that as well, even, so if we're thinking about the public good, and the public has sounded in on the public good, saying, we don't want to chip in,
That's a good point.
that's a flip side to what I've been saying, so.
Yeah,
I do
yeah,
agree.
that's a, one, Mr. Trail?
I do know that people in my neighborhood honestly didn't believe they'd actually shut it down if they voted no. They would just, oh, they're probably spending too much money on it anyway, and this will make them tighten their belt, and I'm not saying that's
Some people
realistic,
might,
but
yeah.
I'm just saying
Yeah, who
that
knows?
there's often a big difference between, well, would you vote to help this, and, oh my God, they actually shut it down. Well, we can't let them
Yeah,
shut it
yeah.
down. My grandmother's in there. I mean, it's.
Sure. But those are all really good points, so
Right.
if there's no further discussion, are we ready to jump one way or the other? Ms. Billman?
You're on a roll.
Are you making the motion? Yeah, this is awesome.
I don't think I said it right last time, so let me hear somebody else say it.
You got to practice makes perfect.
Okay. Well, I keep saying it wrong, but I'll try it again. I move that Plan Case 2333M18 be forwarded to the City Council with recommendation to approve.
Motion by Ms. Billman, and I do want to point out that Mr. Ricci said to strike the last three words, or last four words of the staff recommendation, sure. Our motion will refer to the proposed rezoning and will not affect the comprehensive plan. Just to make that clear in the record. So, motion by Ms. Billman, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Turner. Is there any further discussion? In that case, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Trail,
I want to vote no.
Mr. Turner,
I'm going to reluctantly vote yes, because I think it's right to, well,
Well, it's up review.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, at this
Okay,
point.
half one.
I know,
No.
I know.
He's a yes.
I'm a yes.
Miss Yu,
Yes.
Miss Billman,
Yes?
Mr. Fitch,
Yes.
and Miss Wadrago.
No,
That motion passes. Is there a date on this as well for city council?
It'll actually be going to committee of the whole on Monday,
Okay, so it's a ways out.
this Monday coming to committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole.
The 26th, yes.
Oh, I don't know. It's getting late. So, thank you very much. Are you staying for the final? Yeah, okay. Mr. Garcia, he showed up. I did. I was going to say we'll continue this because Mr. Garcia is not here.
Oh no, I was watching the proceedings in the in our conference room.
You were the one?
Uh-huh. It's just making sure everybody was turning their mics on and all that. Okay. Okay, so I feel like I'm in an interesting position between two interesting cases here.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I'm going to try and keep this quite brief and to the point. So let me just pull up this. All right, that's our multi-exhibit that I can refer to. Okay. So this is, pardon me. Okay, so this is a request from the zoning administrator to rezone 4 parcels in downtown Urbana to the B4 Central Business District. And these changes would match the future land use designation of central business that each of these parcels has in the 2005 comprehensive plan. So really briefly, I will describe these parcels. The first two, 202 and 206, if you're following along on your screen, 202 and 206, West Green Street, are owned by the Urbana Free Library. They're currently zoned R6, which is high-density and multiple-family residential. That zoning designation is a carryover from the buildings that used to be there. Now they're, as I said, owned by the library, and rezoning to B4 would make those parcels consistent with the surrounding library zoned parcels, and also, as I said, match up with the comprehensive plan designation of central business. A little further west, 212 West Green is currently zoned B1, which is a neighborhood business, and that's where the Bluebird Boutique is located. Again, rezoning that to B4 would allow that parcel to match the central business designation from the comp plan. It would also create a cohesive line of B4 zoned parcels there. And also, it would allow the owner of the Bluebird Boutique to build a small addition onto the back of the building.
Minor correction, the tenant to build a...
Yes, the business owner of the Bluebird Boutique. The city actually owns that property. Thank you, Lori. City owns that property, but the current tenant would like to build an addition on the back of the building at their own cost. The B4 zoning would allow them to do that without having to get any variances, which otherwise they would have to do with the B1 zoning. The final parcel in this proposal is over on North Broadway Avenue. It's this large industrial parcel. Currently, it's at 302 North Broadway. The current uses in that building are just for storage. As you can see, it's surrounded by commercial properties and the hotel to the northeast. Again, rezoning that parcel would be consistent with the comp plan. It would also allow the owner, that's privately owned, but it would allow the owner to attract more business uses, which is more in line with the type of uses that they foresee for that property in the future. I think for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to run through all of the LaSalle criteria individually. I think that's been done to you a couple times tonight. So I do want to state for the record that we feel that the requests generally meet the LaSalle criteria. Okay, so that really concludes my report. The options that you have in this case are to forward it to the City Council with a recommendation to approve the rezoning requests. The other option would be to forward this to City Council with a recommendation to deny the requests. You'll find it not surprising, since this was a staff-proposed case, that our recommendation is to approve. I can take any questions you might have.
Was the, thank you, Mr. Garcia, was the property that was industrial, that was the one that they kind of opted out of the general rezone we did a few years ago when Central Business B4 came in and we rezoned a whole bunch of downtown? And
Ooh, how many years ago was that?
I don't know.
That may be before our time.
It was, yeah, a while back.
Okay.
It is a different owner.
That's exactly what yeah, exactly.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, it's
He's
under...
in the audience, should you have any questions for him.
I like it. So, any further questions for Mr. Garcia? You're good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I guess I can leave.
Does anybody wish to address the Plan Commission on this case?
Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Okay.
Yes.
The first three properties are owned by whom?
So these two are owned by the Urbana Free Library. And then this one is owned by the city of Urbana. And we do, actually, I should have mentioned this, there is an agreement with the library that they can purchase that from the city at a future date. Basically, what that agreement says is they tell us they would like to buy the property from the city, and then we'll sell it to them 2 years later.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Garcia? Thank you. And now, sir, if you could just state your name and sign the paper.
My name is Mike Hosier. I'm the owner of the 302 North Broadway building, formerly known as, or probably also known as, the Gill Building. And this is a request that I talked to Brandon about, but it's really a request that's brought forward by the city staff, but I'm just here to support it, obviously, and answer any questions you have about the property.
Any questions for Mr. Hosier? Nope. No questions.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. You stayed a long time for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Having heard from the audience, we will close the public input part of this case and go into a discussion, if there is any. Any discussion on these proposals from city staff? No? Any motions? You're on a roll.
I move that we forward case 2329 M18 to the City Council with recommendation to approve.
That's great. Motion by Ms. Billman,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Turner. You can switch places next time. So we'll do this on a roll call whenever you're ready.
Mr. Turner,
Yes.
Miss Yu,
Yes.
Miss Billman,
Yes.
Mr. Fitch,
Yes.
Miss Wadrago,
Yes?
and Mr. Trail.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I heard it. That motion passes. And do we have a ETA on that?
March 5th.
Nice. Okay, one more. That's the end of our new hearings. This is Plan Case 2335 S18, request by the County Board to waive requirements of the Urbana Subdivision and Land Development Code for proposed nursing home subdivision at 500 Art Bardell Road. The sections to be waived are 21 to 36.A.2, provide access to a public street, 21-37.A, install sidewalks, and 21.38.A, dedicate street right-of-way. So, Mr. Ricci, thank you. If you could keep it moving, that'd be
Absolutely.
most appreciated.
So as you already know, the Champaign County Board has submitted several requests. This is a request to waive those requirements of the Urbana Subdivision and Land Development Code. The special use permit issued in 2004 did not include any conditions related to providing, deferring, or waiving road standards, road or right-of-way dedication, or sidewalks. The staff report did state the following regarding access and parking, which is paraphrased shortly here. The site will be accessed primarily from Art Bartel Road. Art Bartel Road is a private street that currently ties into East Main Street and extends south to serve Metcad and the Humane Society. Since the road is a private drive and not a public street, it is not anticipated to be used for general traffic circulation in the area. Finally, Champaign County is planning to the construction of new sidewalks to loop around the complex that will connect the development to existing and future parks in the area. Because of the requested creation of the nursing home subdivision, for the purposes of determining compliance with the subdivision code, Art Bartel Road is treated as a new street, and the requested subdivision is treated as a new lot. And that's Exhibit B. This is the proposed Champaign County Nursing Home subdivision, which is going to be considered by the Administrative Review Committee. It follows the boundaries of the conditional use permit legal description that was approved last night. This would split the nursing home lot from the underlying County East campus. So, Section 2136A1 of the code requires that all new streets comply with the minimum standards set forth in the code. Section 2136A2 requires that all buildable lots be adjacent to a public street. Private streets are permitted only in a planned unit development. Section 2137A requires that sidewalks shall be provided on both sides of each street in a residential or a commercial development. And finally, Section 2138A requires that a developer dedicates the entire right-of-way to the public when they own the land on both sides of a proposed street. So as already stated, Art Bartel Road is a private street maintained by Champaign County. There are currently no sidewalks on either side of its distance from East Main Street to Learman Avenue, and it is equipped with curbs only where it intersects with the parking lot entrances at the nursing home and Brookins, and with the access drive north of the Juvenile Detention Center. And we'll go back to Exhibit 8 to show you that. So if you zoom in a little bit, you can see there are no sidewalks along Art Bartel Road here. You can maybe able to see that there are curbs at these entrances to the parking lots. Staff has determined that for the long-term effectiveness of the city's street network, it is not necessary for the county to dedicate Art Bartel Road nor to dedicate the underlying right-of-way as long as the county maintains the existing road and right-of-way. The county has not installed sidewalks on either side of the road and requests waiver of their installation. Staff would recommend that in order to improve accessibility and more specifically to improve walkability, that only a deferral should be granted, and for the construction of sidewalks along one side of Art Bartel Road, but that sidewalks should be constructed along the other side of Art Bartel Road as part of the requested subdivision. According to Section 21.7 of the subdivision code, the petitioner must justify the granting of a waiver from strict compliance with the code by showing that the waiver meets certain criteria. First, that there are conditions of topography or other site-specific reasons that make the application of any particular requirement of the code unnecessary or in some cases perhaps even useless. So the level and intensity of the current and future use of the property make some of the code's requirements unnecessary. The nursing home was authorized under the special use permit with access being provided only by Art Bartel Road as a private street, not a public street on dedicated right-of-way. It is even posted as a public street, as a private street. The street was intended to be used for access to the county's campus facilities, not for general or through traffic circulation. This precludes the need to improve the street's construction or dedicate right-of-way. Enforcement of the road construction standards would require a significant additional expense without providing a similar additional improvement of access to the nursing home. Requiring dedication of the road right-of-way would not be necessary if the street itself remained a private street. The special use permit did not require installation of sidewalks at the time the permit was granted, although the applicant had stated that the county intended to install sidewalks. Sidewalk installation would be an additional expense which would, unlike the required street improvements, provide a benefit to the public that is commensurate with the expense incurred. The second criteria is that the granting of the requested waiver would not harm other nearby properties. Granting the requested waivers for public street access and construction and for the dedication of public right-of-way would not harm nearby properties, while granting the third waiver of the installation of sidewalks would contribute to inhibit access to nearby properties. Future traffic is not anticipated to increase. Therefore, the street itself requires neither improvement nor dedication of right-of-way. However, there is currently no provision of infrastructure for pedestrian access to the site or the nearby campus. Pedestrians are forced to walk either on the grass or in the street, which is non-conducive to those with a mobility issue. And finally, the third criteria is that the waiver would not negatively impact the public health, safety, and welfare, including the objectives and goals set forth in the comprehensive plan. Granting the waivers to street construction minimum standards and dedication of right-of-way would not decrease public health, safety, and welfare, nor be contrary to the goals of the comprehensive plan. On the other hand, continuing to provide inadequate infrastructure for pedestrians does negatively impact public health and welfare. Installing sidewalks along at least one side of the street would increase access both to Weaver Park and Prairie Park, both for nursing home residents and visitors and those who may use public transit to get to the campus and then walk to the parks. As we learned in the previous case, there are transit stops at the north end of Art Bartel Road and at the west end of Art Bartel Road. These benefits relate directly to the following goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan: ensuring that land use patterns conserve energy, strengthening Urbana's parks and recreational facilities, and promoting accessibility in residential, commercial, and public locations for disabled residents. And I will also add an additional goal and objective, which was added as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, which was goal 48, which was our complete streets policy, which states that one will use the concepts of complete streets when designing, redesigning, constructing, reconstructing, and maintaining roads and rights of way. So the staff findings are that the applicant has submitted waiver requests from these four requirements of the Urbana Subdivision and Land Development Code for the proposed Champaign County Nursing Home Subdivision, that the proposed waivers for sections 2136 and 2138 would allow Art Bartel Road to remain a private street on a public access easement without negatively impacting current or anticipated levels of automotive or recycling traffic. These waivers would not be harmful to other properties and would not negatively impact public health, safety, and welfare. Staff supports the proposed waiver with the condition that any further subdivision of the parent or subject parcel would trigger the upgrade of the road to public street standards and the dedication of public right-of-way. The proposed waiver for Section 2137 would allow the continued lack of sidewalks on both sides of Art Bartel Road. Staff would support only a deferral of the requirement to install sidewalks on both sides of Art Bartel Road, with the condition that the applicant installs sidewalk along one side of Art Bartel Road from East Main Street to Learman Avenue at this time, with future sidewalk construction triggered by any future requests to subdivide the parent or the subject parcel. The options in this case are to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation for approval of the requested waivers of public street minimum road standards and access provisions and sidewalk installation requirements of the code, or to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation for denial of the requested waivers of public street minimum road standards and access provision and sidewalk installation requirements of the Urbana Subdivision Code. Staff recommends that the Urbana Plan Commission forward this case to City Council with a recommendation for approval of the requested waivers from Section 2136, which requires public street minimum road standards and access provision, and from Section 2138A, which requires the dedication of public right-of-way, with the following condition. At the time of any future request for a subdivision of the parent or subject parcel, the owner must reconstruct Art Bartel Road to the public street standards in effect at the time of that future subdivision and dedicate the public right-of-way. The second staff recommendation is that the Urbana Plan Commission forward to the City Council with a recommendation for denial of the waiver of Section 2137A, which requires sidewalk installation requirements, but support for a deferral of sidewalk along one side of Art Bartel Road with the condition below. The result would be immediate construction of a sidewalk on one side of the street with construction of sidewalk on the other side predicated on any future subdivision. And that recommendation is the owner must install sidewalk along one side of Art Bartel Road from East Main Street to Learman Avenue and install sidewalk on the other side of Art Bartel Road at the time of any future request to subdivide the parent or the subject parcel. That is the end of the staff report.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Does anybody have any questions? Ms. Billman?
So you suggest that sidewalks be installed on just one side of the road. Which side? Why didn't you specify?
We would leave that up to the applicant and to the city engineer to determine which side would be best.
There might be engineering reasons which would lead one side to be more cost-effective, let's say.
Okay. I'm just thinking about the nursing home, that would make sense to me to have a sidewalk along the nursing home.
It would, but without having engineering plans, it would be difficult to make that, it would be difficult for staff to make that recommendation.
Any further questions? Nope. We're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your work on this. You've had a heavy load tonight. We're not done yet, so. Did you want to address us on this case?
As a zoning administrator, it's, I can appreciate the task in front of you with this case. But as representing the county board, I've been spending a lot of time as I'm driving on Art Bartel Road. And one reason there was opposition to dedicating the street was the northern portion of the Brookins campus is actually the heart of a lot of county operations. We have the Salt Dome for a county highway facility. We have the Emergency Operations Center, which actually has reduced the linkages to Art Bartel Road because they wanted to be more secure. We have animal control and the county clerk's warehouse there. The point is, this would be like putting a public sidewalk through the Public Works facility for the city of Urbana. No one ever planned for that to be a public street, and obviously converting it to a public street would be very expensive. But introducing sidewalks through there just raises a lot of county concerns. The county board was hoping to not even have to provide sidewalks along the southern stretch of Art Bartel Road, but again, as a zoning administrator, I can appreciate the good that a sidewalk would do along that southern stretch of Art Bartel Road. It would provide access to the nursing home, might even provide better access to the Park District facilities that are throughout the whole interior there. So I can appreciate the task before you tonight. I've made it clear to staff that before this gets all the way to the city council, I hope we can talk more about this northern part of Art Bartel Road. If it were being converted to a public street, even though adding sidewalks would still raise these security and safety issues about folks wandering into areas where they really shouldn't be, but at least doing the sidewalk would be much easier. There's a lot of open drainage along Art Bartel Road. If you've been by there lately, you can appreciate how much the stormwater stands and soaks into the ground, which is actually a good thing. We can redesign that, push the stormwater areas away so that we can have a sidewalk that is walkable. We can deal with the ditches and the sidewalk. It's not going to be easy, but it can be done. There is a lot of engineering to do. But I really, from a county operations concern, introducing public sidewalks through those buildings up there, in our mind, is not a good thing. We hope we can arrive at some kind of a better situation between now and city council, but
Sure.
we did want to bring that to your attention.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions? Because I think I do have a couple of questions. Do people walk there now? I mean, is this a common place where people would walk to either the detention facility or, you know, to the nursing home?
The only people I see walking there are during the warm weather when the park district facilities are in use. There are people walking everywhere.
Yeah.
But they're there for the sporting events.
Uh-huh.
Every now and then, county staff will just go out and take a nice leisurely walk, but
Yeah, right.
I really don't ever remember seeing someone walk to the nursing home, but I can't say it doesn't happen.
When they walk, I guess they walk in the street now, to the extent?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that isn't a street. People generally do drive at a reduced rate.
Yeah.
Even though,
It's more like an access drive or
Yeah.
some such, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I think, I just wanted to, you know, what's the benefit to the public? Will this cause people to walk more? Do people walk there? You know, will this draw more people to walk there? Those kind of questions are really what I've got. So, Mr. Trail?
Well, since we just voted to turn this area to townhouses, I mean,
Yeah, it's an interesting point, actually.
also, I used to bike there before I finally decided it was too dangerous to bike in Champaign-Urbana, and I stopped. I used to bike over and actually park my bike over by the nursing home and walk around in Weaver Park.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to access it any other way. I mean, that's a quick and easy way to do it. Otherwise, you know, you're going to end up putting your bike at the school or whatever. I mean,
I bike through there all the time.
Yeah.
yeah. And you know, my son's over at Brookins all the time, or used to be. I mean, sidewalks along there would be extremely useful. And I kind of, to me, it's like hard to find a situation where, you know, just because someone says, well, I haven't seen anybody walking there, because if there's no sidewalks, it's probably why people aren't walking there. So, I mean, I just can't
It
see
was just a
any-
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any further questions? No, I think we're good. Thank you very much for sticking us out. All right, close the public input and begin discussion, or whatever you feel like you're ready to do.
We're already discussed, so.
Just one round from you? Yeah.
I guess I would just say,
Fair.
I like the staff recommendations. It seems like a nice compromise here to defer some things, provide some sidewalks, keep the option there for future subdivision to actually upgrade the road to plan standards, city standards. I think that's important in terms of potential for that property.
Okay. Anybody else?
I drove out there just to see the area, and I was actually a little surprised at the amount of traffic between Learman and the nursing home. And it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not a high-traffic time.
Vehicle traffic?
Yeah,
Yeah.
vehicle traffic. The parking lot behind Brookins is well-used.
Mhm.
And then going on to the nursing home, so I agree that I think it's a compromise to say just a sidewalk on one side.
Thank you. Mr. Trail?
I have a question. If this was actually, if we're at the point, we just rezoned this, we voted to rezone this to R4. If this had been, someone wanted to build a nursing home there, a private nursing home, would they or would be likely to give them similar consideration to not upgrade the road?
Well, I think the difference here is that there is a road there, so they're not building in a green field where there is no road. So coming out of the gate, it's a lot different. But certainly if it was new in a green field and they had to build a road, they might request a waiver, and we'd have to look at that point, but they would definitely need to be meeting city standards, but they didn't have something existing to deal with in that.
So just part of the ongoing American preference for greenfield development?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be a different process, a different consideration. I agree. Anything further? No? This is a tricky motion.
I'm not doing it.
Well, you've done a great job tonight.
Can we move the staff recommendation?
Yes. Well, I would be a little bit more specific than that, but you can definitely borrow from the language of the staff recommendation in order to make the motion.
I have a call.
Excuse me.
So I guess I would move. It is a little tricky.
This is a hard one.
For, plan case number 2335 M18. Approval, let's see, approval of the waiver from section 2136, which requires public street minimum road standards and access provision, and section 2138A, which requires the dedication of public right-of-way, with the condition that at any time in the future, request for a subdivision of the parent or subject parcel, the owner must reconstruct the road to the public street standards in fact at the time of that future subdivision and dedicate public right-of-way. Additionally,
Would it be easier to split it into two?
I think we could handle it in one.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
No,
then.
that's all right.
trying to save my voice, right? Additionally, would recommend a denial of the waiver of section 2138A, which requires sidewalk installation requirement, but support
2137A.
2137A, thank you. But support for deferral of sidewalks along one side of Art Bartel Road with the condition below. The result would be immediate construction of the sidewalk on one side of the road to be determined, with construction of sidewalk on the other side predicated on a future subdivision. The owner must install sidewalk along one side of Art Bartel Road from East Main Street to Lehman Avenue, and install sidewalk on the other side of Art Bartel Road at the time of any future request to subdivide the parent or subject parcel.
Motion by Mr. Turner,
There you go.
I do, it's all right here.
seconded by Ms. Billman. Great. Any further discussion? Mr. Trail?
I have a quick question about the triggering clause here. A future request for subdivision. There would be potential uses of this as R4 that would not require a subdivision of the property, correct? Does that mean this is not triggered unless a subdivision is requested?
That would be correct. The reason we put this trigger in is because we didn't want to see this further 65 acres chopped up into other private developments potentially and keep that as a private street. So we weren't thinking so much about re-subdivision of this lot as much as future chipping away at it, so to speak. We wanted to draw a clear line that staff would support this one, but in the future, we would need to see that street upgraded.
But if I have another use for this that does not require subdivision, the waiver continues.
Correct.
Interesting.
I find myself now wanting to ask, what are the potential uses for this, including, all sorts of
Well,
things.
we went through a lot of the list, yeah.
And
I mean,
real-
if you'd like me to clarify, If there was a development here of a substantial generator of traffic, let's say, we might require a traffic impact analysis, which could say, oh, you need to do X, Y, and Z. So there's potentially other ways to get some improvements there that wouldn't necessarily need this trigger, but this was the simplest way to protect our future interests. So it might not be a perfect solution, but there could be other ways should there be a major traffic generator in the future.
It's a good question.
You're waiting for me to have a good answer?
Well, I hear you. We could tinker with the language, but I don't know how we would even start to tinker with it. So, barring any objections, I'd like to go into.
Could I add something?
Sure.
Just to remind you all that Champaign County is maintaining Art Bartel Road, and for 10 years, 9 years, the intent clearly is to have nothing but a nursing home there, and whoever buys that property, it's being sold with the condition that it be used as a nursing home and nothing but nursing home traffic use Art Bartel Road. So
I think we're just guarding against
I understand.
a crazy
That's
eventuality.
excellent thinking.
You know.
I'm just trying to say that we have done as much as we can to ensure that nothing but a nursing home would ever use it, because we're going to be paying for the maintenance.
I understand that, although I'm tainted by the fact that I spent an unfortunate period of my time in law school, and
That is difficult to
I know the best laid plans in language, and where that's a fairly obvious out, depending upon the types of usage. I don't know that it's a realistic danger, but it's a pretty obvious out. What you intend to use it for at R4 would not trigger the waiver. If it's something that requires a special use, can the waiver obviously could be considered, part of the condition of the special use would be to get rid of the waiver, but it's only when they do something by right.
Probably true.
We might have an issue.
Yeah, probably true.
That's what I'm trying to find.
Yeah.
By rights.
I read through that earlier. Yeah.
You're thinking I remember?
There's a bunch of different kinds of residential, and then a golf course and a library and a church and a school. Yeah.
So a church?
Church
doesn't require.
Yeah, probably not.
Doesn't require subdivision of the property. Can generate a lot of traffic. Might really want sidewalks. That's all I'm trying to get at.
We'll have one. Well, one sidewalk.
Yeah. What? So anyway, I think we're ready to vote.
Miss Yu,
Yes.
Miss Billman,
Yes.
Mr. Fitch,
Yes.
Miss Buitrago,
Yes.
Mr. Trail,
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Is that it? That motion passes. Thank you. All right, audience participation, you.
You can stay a little longer in chat.
Is there a staff report? Good. We don't have a study session. Before we adjourn, I want to say, great job, Plan Commission. Great job. The discussion was outstanding. You got the stamina of, unbelievable.